Hey y'all, Akshay in the editing room here. Just a couple of quick notes before we get to today's 100th episode of Scions of the Southland. Thank you so much for your support over the last few years while we've been doing this. It's been really fun to put this show together every week and really get to the nitty gritty about tech sports wherever they're being played. And Jake and I really appreciate the feedback that you've given us and all the love. Secondly, thank you to everyone at From the Rumble Seat that helped put this show together. It was really fun to listen to everyone's stories and reminisce about some of these really awesome moments in tech sports history. And we hope you enjoy listening to it. All right, cue the intro.
As the first part of the Scions episode 100 special, I am looking for words to say. We have Mr. Jake Patterson, lifelong tech fan, but now a UNC student, unfortunately. So tell us a little bit about yourself. We obviously know you, but the listenership doesn't know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you became a tech fan, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jake Patterson. I used to do the technical tidbits before I got to college at Chapel Hill, which it is my state school because I'm from Western North Carolina, right below Asheville. And so I grew up around a lot of people who were Clemson football fans in the fall and then UNC basketball fans in the winter.
Disgusting.
It's been great getting to know some of those people here. At Chapel Hill, longtime Tech fan because my granddad went to Georgia Tech back in the 1950s. My dad went to a small private school in Florida. My mom doesn't really care about sports, so it was just natural. I became a Georgia Tech fan, and after a long and winding road, I'm here at UNC, but I still got a soft spot for Georgia Tech. They taught me how to lose, which was really nice. Like I learned how to lose and feel sad with Georgia Tech sports.
Surely rooting for UNC football has had a totally different experience in 2021.
Yeah, that $120 I spent to watch the Duke's Mayo Bowl was not a great investment. At least I got to see Shane Beamer take a Mayo bath. Like that game didn't happen. Mayo bath did happen. That's how I look at it.
The Mayo bath is a great gifable moment of this season.
It's funny, we haven't recorded the rest of the episode yet, but there's absolutely a line in the shot sheet where we're talking about track, and I'm already going to decide that for the next year I will call South Carolina Carolina just because of the outcome of that bowl game. But
I will do it just because he was willing to take a Mayo bath. He like was like, all right, I'm here for it. He also got dinged by the container as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I think Mac Brown did agree as well. He was like, I'd take a frying pan to the face if it meant we could win a football. That's what I like that vibe. I like that energy,
Heisman-esque right there.
True.
Football guy.
It would have been really funny to see someone get hit with a frying pan. Let's be clear.
Mayo, big steel plate.
A cast iron, different than steel. Cast iron. It's all seasoned and stuff too.
So you made it to Charlotte, maybe not for that championship game like people would have thought at the end of the year, but you said you're a Western Carolina guy. Not Western Carolina, the school, but so I guess having lived in Chicago and Atlanta my whole life, like how's it been like in terms of like access to sports? Like, do you come to Atlanta for games? You go to Charlotte or Raleigh or Durham, Chapel Hill? Like what does that look like? It I have to imagine it'd be a pretty big event when you
a lot of driving, I imagine too.
Yeah, very much a large amount of driving, just because it's like if I want to go to Charlotte, it's 2 hours minimum, right? And Atlanta's 3 hours from my house. Raleigh, Durham's 4 hours. So really? A game or a tech event was like a big deal. So my family, we would typically only go to 2 or 3, maybe 1 or 2, more like it, tech football games per year. And then if tech was playing in the triangle against either UNC or Duke, we'd we went to a couple Duke games.
You and like
Didn't go to
maybe
any UNC
100
football
other
games.
people.
Oh yeah, no, it was kind of sad, really. Like if they weren't a private, that's just I could hear myself think in that stadium, and that's just emblematic of Duke University as a whole. I feel like, and I can go on a whole Duke hating tangent, but it was very much like had to get up at 6:30 or 7 in the morning to get to Atlanta for a game day because 12:20 start time typically.
Noon 30, baby.
And so it really like made all of my tech games special just because I would go with my dad always and then sometimes we'd take some family friends. I was at the Citadel game in 2019 because one of my best friends from high school goes to the Citadel now. And so he was there and he was rubbing that in my face. Yeah. So it really made all tech and sporting events special just because like it was a trip. It was a chore. It wasn't it was a chore whenever tech lost. But it just made me value it more instead of just being like, oh, I can walk 10 minutes from my apartment, get to the game.
Yeah. So, all right, you have one more thing. I was going to use a transition, and Jake the Elder here was about to make an edgewise case here.
Yeah, I was going to say that seems like a shot across the bow at me and Akshay, who both live a 10-minute walk from tech. But
they're still special. They're just a different definition of the word special.
Yeah, you get to do it all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I didn't even go to the game last night. I was making soup. Couldn't go to the game. Are you kidding me?
Gotta tend soup bar sometimes,
Yeah. All right. Not to derail. Let's do that.
Let's get. So the topic of the jour is top tech moments, TTM. You picked the 2014 game versus Clemson. That was a 28-6 win for Tech, a ranked Georgia Tech team that ended up 9-2 after that game. Orange Bowl at the end of the season, yada yada. Speaking of kickoff times, by the way, this was a nooner. I remember pulling this up. This was, I guess, the fall before I started at Tech. This was a nooner in mid-November. It was cold. 90%
freezing cold.
Though.
Yeah.
So I've got an interesting thing to point out there because it's been sitting in the back of my head, and I've been looking to work this in. Akshay and I are both older than you, right? You're freshman in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that you picked a game like Tech was nowhere near my radar when this happened, and
because this was a year before you. Because this was a year before you watched Miracle on Techwood Drive and applied like basically the next day.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's very interesting. Like you're younger, but like honestly, way older in your.
You picked a game you picked a game that kind of outstrips both Jake and I's fandoms because I didn't grow up a Tech fan. You did. So tell us a little bit about the experience. Tell us a little about the day.
Yeah. So I just remember we drove in the night before, and actually the hotel that we were staying at also hosted the Auburn band, which was going to play at Georgia that night. I don't know if it was college game day, but it was like Auburn UGA night game. It was the game that Nick Chubb or someone tore their ACL. I just distinctly remember that watching on the TV. So we got up early in the morning and it was freezing cold. Like it was probably 30 degrees, 32 degrees. And me being 11 years old, I had not prepared in the slightest for that temperature differential.
So you wore shorts, right?
I was in pants. I was in sweatpants, but I just had a weird like pullover on, right? That was good basically for like 55 degrees plus. So I was freezing cold, and it was me and my dad. We went to the game. My parent, I think my sister and my mom like did some errands in Atlanta, quote unquote. And we get to the game and it's packed, right? And most of the people at the game, unfortunately, were Clemson fans. It was a very orange crowd, which, I mean, I wasn't surprised by. I don't think anyone's surprised that Clemson took over Bobby Dodd. And it was a good game for me to go to because this was the first time in my life that Georgia Tech had really had football success. And all of my friends, or a lot of my friends, were Clemson football fans, right? So they were all excited. I was going to the game because they were like, you're going to lose. It's going to be a murder. It's going to be a beatdown. So we're sitting there in the cold, and then Georgia Tech just decides to like show up.
Yeah.
and play amazing football. It helped that Deshaun Watson got hurt and Cole Stout had to come in. I think he threw a pick six to Chris Milton. It was like a 95
Jamal Golden
pick six.
is what
Jamal
I see,
Golden.
but
yeah, it was Jamal Golden. Yeah, but
same.
It was at that point I realized, like, wow, I might have a fun Monday at school. This might be a good time. Might be wearing my Tech jersey, yelling at everyone. This might be a good time. And then just the game, I was freezing my butt off. Drank at least 2 or 3 of those hot chocolates in the souvenir cups just to try and stay warm. Oh yeah, and it was a lot of fun, mainly because I was with my dad and like seeing him be super happy because he hadn't really experienced a lot of Tech football success since 2008. And just experiencing that with him, being cold, which made it more fun just because we were dominating Clemson. And then having that gratification that on Monday morning at Hendersonville Middle School, I could go off on all the Clemson fans and I'd have everything to back it up.
God, yes.
It's interesting hearing you talk about like your dad kind of living the vicariously through like his dad's school and stuff like that, because honestly kind of parallels like my coming up. My mom went to Indiana, you know, the worst Power 5
Banners,
program.
baby. Banners.
Basketball, great, but you know, terrible football. My dad's school didn't have football, so like I guess I didn't really have the same outlet of like the grandfather's school kind of thing. But like you know, like that's how I picked up my basketball. At least is like experiencing it through them. So no, definitely cool to hear that. And I did have one question for you. Was there like a point where you knew it was going to be a win, or was it just kind of like, okay, we keep building.
I feel like this is preying on a Atlanta sports moment here.
He's from Carolina and I'm from Chicago. We outweigh your like superstition.
Anyway, Braves World Series winners. Doesn't matter anymore.
Absolutely. I think it was, I hate to say it because up until the point that Deshaun Watson got hurt, I knew I was pretty convinced it would be a very close game just because he's just worlds better than, even though Tech's defense was great that year, just worlds better than most quarterbacks they'd have to face outside of probably Dak Prescott, you know, a month later. Up until that point, I was expecting a close game, and it was a close game. And then whenever Cole Stout came in and threw like 3 or 4 passes, I kind of realized like, oh, this guy's not very good. If the offense can just score some points, Tech would be fine. And then Jamal Golden had like the 90-yard pick six. And it was at that moment I was like, okay, this is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to go in very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really weird to look, or weird, not the right word. It's very interesting to look at the advanced box score because I have that pulled up in a tab here. And you see Deshaun Watson comes out of the game with 2 minutes left in the first quarter. And so it's Cole Stout run for 5 yards. Cole Stout run for 1 yard. Jamal Golden 85-yard interception return for touchdown. So it turns like this because, and you're looking at that, just to get nerdy here for a second, you're looking at that interception return having like a 30-point win probability swing on that alone. Because Clemson came in favored, right? Clemson was favored by, well, just 1.5, but also they're an away favorite, right?
And so they were ranked higher, I think. Yeah.
So I have 19 versus 22. So it just swings like that. And then it's back to a coin flip at Tech 6, Clemson 3. And Jake, the older, and I looked at the box score and looked through the highlights, trying to figure out why they ended up going for 2 on after the interception. It turned out to be a blown hold, right? That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, I think that's what because that we actually went back into the rumble seat game thread. We were like, this guy's elsewhere.
Maybe Chow was the holder. Maybe he got in like secretly and blew it. You never know.
I'm fairly sure it was Rodwell.
It was certainly Rodwell, but like that would have just been the icing on the cake right there.
Oh yeah. The greater from the rumble seat extended universe, you know.
From the rumble seat cinematic universe really has its roots everywhere, you know.
Oh, absolutely. We're in all portions of the Tech fan base. The moments.
So I got to ask, obviously you're at UNC now. What did what did the mayhem at Mercedes-Benz or that basketball game, I guess being two opposite sides of the coin, right? With a UNC basketball win and a Tech football win. What did that like do to you? Like, how did you feel? Like, what was that like?
It was kind of surreal because I went with my campus ministry and we were on a beach retreat. And so we were all watching the game, the mayhem at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, TM, best stadium in the world ever.
It is the best stadium in the world. I will not
time.
hear that snark, by the way. Best stadium in the world by far. Continue.
And so it was very much like I wanted UNC to win just because, like, I'm here. I wanted to go to the ACC championship game. That's whenever I still had a little bit of hope. But I wasn't mad at the end of the game, if that makes sense. Like, typically, like, after the South Carolina win, I wanted to clean house, fire everyone. I still kind of do. And after a couple of losses, or South Carolina lost, I'm sorry, and then like Florida State lost for UNC football earlier this year, I was typical like sports fan, not happy, mad. Yeah. After Tech beat UNC in football, it was kind of like,
you got it's the two extremes cancel out, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely,
because it's the two sides of the same coin. They both, you have euphoria of what this could mean for Tech, which, spoiler alert, not a ton, and then what it means for UNC, which actually turned out to be quite a lot. But
we're still
those two extremes just bring it back to a happy medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and same thing with the basketball game. It was one of those, I was studying for finals because I had my Spanish final the next day at 8 a.m. So I was like following the game, didn't watch it. And it was one of those, like, wanted Carolina to win, but obviously if they hadn't, would have been too angry. But since they did win, I was happy, but not like, go you know, all that stuff. It was kind of like, yeah, we won. Good. I'm glad this happened.
You're a better man than me. I remember the 2017 NIT we hosted against Indiana in the first round. And I was like, Mom, we're going to win. My brother goes there too.
We're
going to win, blah, blah, blah. You guys didn't even want to host. Like,
that is true. They did not want to host, and Tom Crean did get fired after that game.
Sanctify Assembly Hall or whatever. Like, yeah, we'll take that over. But
whatever.
Better man than me. So
hey, well,
this
there's
Saturday
another one
might be
those.
Different.
Yeah, there's another one of those this Saturday at 8 p.m. I think that's on ACC Network.
Yeah. Hey, if you're in the building, I think it turns a little bit.
It's going to be different. It's going to be very different. Yeah, and especially like, it's just the atmosphere inside the Dean Dome is wonderful. It is a great place to watch a basketball game just because it's so. I mean, like, growing up a Tech fan, obviously, because I was so into the sports and surrounding myself with like y'all, I was passionate about the sports, but like at the football games and at the basketball games, I never felt the entire place hype, quote unquote.
Yeah. At McCamish or at
McCamish and at Bobby Dodd.
McCamish. I'm going to have to get the pronunciation right on that eventually.
My bad. And it's there. It was never like hype start to finish, right? There's apathetic people, but at UNC, especially at the Dean Dome, it's just crazy the entire time. I mean, just loud, things like that. And there are a lot more people in the arena as well, because the capacity, I think, is 22,000.
Yeah,
it is a different atmosphere. I've learned a lot. There's so much more caring about athletics, I guess is the right word.
Yeah. Hey, and I'll note that, like, I don't disagree about McCamish, about Bobby Dodd. And it's one thing I've learned since I graduated, that, like, there's things that you just can't, for lack of a better word, pull off when you're not in a student section. You know what I mean? If people aren't into it,
like, and let's be clear, Jake has pulled off a lot of stuff in a student section.
I've seen the Louisville video.
Oh, no. It was Duke.
Oh, Duke. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Featured on ESPN. But, I agree. And, hey, not that I say I hope you have an enjoyable game, but, when you got a man on the inside, it's the same. It's similar to how I feel about Louisville these days. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. And
but
you want your team to win, but like if they lose, like, it's not the end of the world. It's very different from the loss to like Notre Dame because I was like fuming mad after UNC lost to Notre Dame Wednesday night. And I'm sure y'all probably as well last night.
Yeah.
It'll be different if we do lose. And hopefully, though, that won't be the case, right?
We'll see. Well, Jake the Younger, thanks for coming on. Thanks for participating in our 100th episode special. Hopefully we can have you on a couple more times. For number 2, session 2 of our Science of the Southland episode 100 special, we have Robert Binion, owner and proprietor of the Binion Index. Robert, how are you doing on this Sunday afternoon?
Doing well. It's sunny. It's nice outside. Went for a walk, went to the park, and excited to talk a little bit of football.
Absolutely. Well, excited to talk about Georgia Tech football is, interesting. Interesting sentiment as of late, I will say.
It's nice to look at the past.
It is. So tell us, before we get to the game that we want to talk about, or your top Tech moment, which, spoiler alert for everyone listening, that will be the 2008 Georgia game. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background as a Tech fan, all that sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I was born and raised in Atlanta suburbs. My granddad went to Tech in the 50s. My dad and mom both graduated in the early 80s. And so I was born without any choice whatsoever about whether I was going to care about football and who I was going to cheer for. My first memory of being at a game, I think I was 4, and I didn't miss a game for about 15 straight years at one point.
Wow.
A home game. Grew up deeply immersed in it, have been pouring over box scores for as long as I can remember. And now we have way better box scores courtesy of Akshay and friends. And it's fun to look back on a time when we were just excited about where we were. It was unexpected in 08 in a lot of ways. Just for more context, that was my senior year at Tech. I started in 05, so 08 was my last fall. We'd had 2 really heartbreaking losses to Georgia in 05 and 06. They beat us pretty bad in 07 when they were probably playing better than anybody towards the end of the year. And did not want to go out of college without beating them a single time. So that was kind of some of the emotional lead up to why this game was so much fun.
It's interesting that you contrast that with like going out of college without seeing a win as being the big concern. Because I got spoiled, right? I came to school in 2016. We won the first year, and I was like, this is great. This is easy.
It's going to happen every time.
And I've just had a great existence since. So, but I feel kind of the inverse of that, at least in my experience. But
so I guess my contrast to that is, I guess I started being a fan sort of around 2014, right around when I got accepted. So I got that 2014 win. And then I was in school for the 2016 win. But then in between and after that, it's just kind of been, you tried.
So did you go?
Did we try? I don't know.
Try is definitely a verb that you could use to describe the efforts, yes.
I take it you were in Athens then for the game in 08?
I was. So we drove over about 7 in the morning. It was my dad, my brother, and then 2 of my closest friends from GT. That was our crew for the day. We found a anonymous concrete structure in downtown Athens to park and drink a Miller Lite and then wander over to the stadium.
Nice.
That sounds like most people in Athens. There are a lot of anonymous concrete structures in that city.
Yeah. Hey, or you could find an anonymous ditch. That's what we did the last time we were up there.
I think I did the trip in 2016 because I had a bunch of people that I went to high school with that went there, just like everyone that grows up in the suburbs, that it just happens that way, right? And we ended up going to, I think we ended up hanging out at a couple of tailgates. I think we were at his fraternity house for the longest time, and just seeing the difference in how their campus is laid out. It's very sprawly, honestly. Yeah. For as small of a city as Athens is, the campus is very sprawly compared to Tech, which is just crammed into this barely. Jake will probably know the actual square footage, but it's just like such a small space in town.
Actually, one thing that they do teach us in mechanical engineering is units, and I definitely would not use square feet as my unit of choice.
I've been thinking about real estate lately. All right, so it's on my mind.
Going for condo number 7, 8, 10, house 5.
Okay, look. I have to fund donations to the athletic department somehow. All right.
Yeah, sure. But not to get too far off the beaten path. Was it your first game in Athens you've been to, or did you grow up going?
Oh no,
for a long time?
it was probably my 9th or 10th, I would guess. So my mom's side of the family are all Georgia fans, and so our normal tradition for Thanksgiving was her dad would drive up and stay with us for a few nights, and then he would drive everybody over to Athens on Saturday morning, and he would sit on his side of the stadium, and my dad and I would sit on our side, and then we'd meet up afterwards. And he was happier more often than we were, but we had a few fun ones. 98 and 2000 were pretty awesome. But yeah, it was pretty well versed in the Stanford Stadium scene by then.
God, that thing is massive. Like I'm looking through the ESPN box score too, and it lists the capacity as of 2008 as 92,700 whatever. But you just look at the picture that they provided. It's like 3 decks. Each
they
one goes up.
Finished that 600 level that year, I think. I mean, it's like a mile up in the air. It's a terrible place to watch a football game.
I think they put all the students up there too.
Yeah,
they put like a bunch of students up there. I've heard so many complaints about them being stuck in like really, really crappy seats.
That's an interesting conundrum that like Clemson has too, because they put half their section down in that prime, the stupid hill with the not all hill part, that whatever.
The Howard's Rock Hill.
Yes, and then they stick the rest of them up in that upper left corner, and it's like, well, you can have a really good football team, but if you're one of these like casual borderline folks, if you go to a game, you're just going to be like put in the middle of nowhere. Like it's kind of a disincentive to going. But
I think that's something that we do well, like on principle, on paper. I think that's something we do really well, in that we give students that entire end zone, and but it's like a good 10,000 seats, 10,000-ish seats, right? That students have access to, whether those get filled or not. So I can say like different story, but we provide all of that space, all that prime space that Tech could be making a bunch of money off to students. So I think that's actually really well done for student experience at games.
So Robert, were you all the way up in the 600s for this game, or
we were in the threes? So the mid tier. I think Tech got like one corner in the 100 level, and then we were in the 300s above that kind of section where the band was.
Gotcha.
Of course, they stuck the band in the upper corner.
Were
those like your usual spots, or did you kind of like?
If I recall, we were somewhere different almost every year. I think Athens kept changing where the visitor allotments were going to, and eventually it got. So the last time I was there was 2012, because then I moved away, and life is crazy. But in 2012, we were in the 300s, but we were on the exact opposite corner. So they were doing some musical chairs of where the visitors were over a number of years.
Gotcha. Kind of pivoting, like just at least a little bit to the game play. Like, do you have any specific recollections, like walking through the game, or like moments that stood out to you?
Yeah. So I remember walking to the stadium, and I was honestly thinking we didn't have a chance. It's interesting looking at this. Georgia was only favored by 2.5. I would have guessed it would have been 10 or 14, at least looking back. They were number one preseason that year. It was Matthew Stafford was kind of the anointed number one pick in the draft. I looked it up. They had 26 NFL players on their roster, and we had what was maybe our most talented roster in recent memory, and we only had 8. So it's one of those like, man, I love what Paul Johnson's doing year one. This is so much fun, but this is about to be ugly. We just can't compete with them athletically. So it was kind of a walk in, enjoy the day. Anything that happens good football-wise is kind of gravy on top. But I really had pretty low expectations. And then we start out, it was weird. Offense couldn't do anything, scoring a pick 6 to kind of stay in the game early. But Stafford threw 4 touchdowns in the first half. And I remember walking that concourse just thinking, the offense is going to get better, but how in the world are we ever going to stop this guy? I mean, it was like well, it was like the pass defense from this year, basically every game. And you just had no hope at all that anything was going to change there. So get back to the seats after halftime, and that's when the fireworks just absolutely started to go off. It was insane for about 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah, this is something that we were talking about before we hit record, but this game, all of the advanced stats, all of the win probability charts and everything look very similar to something you might see today, or like a really good game that you might see today. And it's just and I guess part of that is due to Stafford being an NFL quality quarterback, which how good of an NFL quality quarterback is kind of up to your interpretation. But you're looking at both teams being positive in EPA, Tech having 6.5 overall, Georgia having 14. You mentioned before we started recording, if you look at the EPA without explosive plays, Tech is down at negative 17, Georgia's at 2. So you're talking about sort of the similar offensive consistency. I mean, like similar offensive consistency to today. And we all know, like, advanced stats in general notoriously hated the option. And that bears out here so much in a lot of different ways.
The play that, sets things off is the first play out of the half. I think the kickoff went out of bounds, and so we had good field position, and then Dwyer goes 60 in 6 seconds, and it's like, okay, we might have ourselves a game. And then we hit a 2-point conversion, get the ball right back, go on our one kind of methodical drive for the day, score again, get another 2-pointer, and it's tied, at 5 minutes after I had been moping around the concourse level. It's like, what in the world just happened? And then Georgia fumbles the kickoff. And so we go up by 7, and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes of game time for that massive of a swing to happen. So, yeah, looking at this win probability chart, Georgia was 96% right around halftime. And the next thing you know, Tech's close to 80. It just,
It's the way we love it. That's you got to rip their hearts right out of their chests. Great fun.
I just learned this right now. I never knew Blair Walsh was a UGA guy too. The more you know.
That's why you doinked a couple of field goals for Vikings.
TCF Bank Stadium, man. No. Shoot, I was going to take a left turn here. Oh, okay. This game, obviously did not see it live. I was a 10-year-old kid in Chicago the day after Thanksgiving, or 2 days after Thanksgiving. It was not
watching Indiana Purdue instead.
Honestly, but my exposure to this game, a couple different sources. Obviously, once I got here, heard about breaking the streak and whatnot. Carter's top 10 of the last 10 that he did for Paul Johnson's 10th anniversary season was obviously key too. But one thing that stuck out to me was when I got into the Ramblin' Rec Club, in the garage, there's this T-shirt hung up that says "The Redneck Apocalypse." Was that a thing that like people were saying, or is that just some guy made a shirt with like a weird saying on it? Like,
I've never heard that before.
All right.
So I wouldn't, like, Rec Club is known for this stuff. They just making T-shirts that no one else knows about. So I'm not
like
surprised at all.
Bookstore commemorative, like, how they make like the season symbol. Like, I don't know, but I'm glad I've never used it in an article because I've never had the balls to do that. But
I got one of those, scoreboard commemorative T-shirts from this game, and it definitely didn't say that on it. So that must have been a limited production run there.
I'm learning on Google now while looking for this shirt. It's the Redneck Apocalypse is the name of a book series.
Huh.
Hey.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to dig deeper into that one later on, but it is apparently a book series. So I don't know, but this game, it set a lot of narrative tones for the Paul Johnson era, right? You talk about someone just rolling in with a new style of offense, something that was a little quirky, was derided as high school, but he immediately hit the ground running. And I think that's something really special that we saw in 08. Obviously, again, I didn't see it. Jake didn't see it, but there's something that Georgia Tech got to experience in 08 right off of the bat.
And I remember the post game so vividly too. We're sitting in the crawling traffic out of Athens and listening, going back and forth between the radio stations, and you've got Eric Zier on 750, who I really think he may have been in tears. And over, it's just like, how did we lose to a high school offense? Which, we completed one pass on the day. You understand why he might have said that, but there was just this despair that something could have happened to them, to high and mighty Matthew Stafford led Georgia. And then on the other station, you've got Paul Johnson saying, I expect to do this again. And he did. He won twice more in Athens. He won more than he lost there. And there was something, just a confidence that exuded from him, and a fear on the other side that, I hadn't seen. Well, 2000, they were afraid of us and they fired their coach, and then Rick turned things around real quick. But just the emotional tenor on both sides swung so much that day. It was wild.
Mm-hmm. And I think this line from the recap, the AP recap, kind of sums it all up for that season for them. Like, Georgia 9-3 started the year number 1, but will likely settle for a spot in the Capital One Bowl, far short of its goal of competing for a Southeastern Conference title and maybe even a national championship. So it was that year. You have Stafford, Massaquoi, just a bunch
AJ
of NFL
Green
talent.
was a freshman, and Marino was running all over the yard. It was quite a team. I mean, they were really good.
And they went to the Capital One Bowl.
And
them's the breaks, kids. Them's the breaks.
Sometimes that happens.
and it was still the case where you looked at both teams and it's like, our people just don't look like theirs. There's just a 30-pound difference across the field. And so, the most fun play of the game is the Roddy Jones play, I think, to really ice it. So, we were up by 10 for a little while, and they scored to cut it to 3. Seemed like they were starting to figure some things out. And we get, I think, a 3rd and 5 on our 46, our 45, something like that. And, Roddy, love Roddy to death, but he's 5'8", 190 pounds. Compared to Georgia's linebackers, doesn't look like he belongs. So let me do a quick tangent real quick. When I was a junior in high school, Roddy was a year older than me, and we played them in the opening game of the year. And I was playing safety, and they were on like their own 5. And so I think we were kind of stacking the box a little bit, trying to keep them pinned down. And Roddy goes 95. And by the time he gets to the other end zone, I think I was 20 yards behind him. And I didn't get to play safety a whole lot more after that. But I'm thinking, like, this is the guy that I played in high school. And now we're out here and there's 3 NFL linebackers on the other, side of the field. And the next thing you know, he's gone 54 down the sideline, bounced off every Georgia defender in sight. It's one of the most epic runs in Tech history. And I think they're just sitting there like, we should be physically dominating this team in every way. And yet, there they go again. And we can't do anything about this.
That was the magic of the option in Athens those 3 years, though. It was, they knew it was coming. They knew how it was coming. They had the talent to stop it. And something just did not click. Something it just kept misfiring, and all 3 times. So that's 08, 14 and 16. Something just could not fire, and they could not finish it.
And that's why I bought tickets in 2018. I was like, hey, maybe it'll happen again. But no, I had been offered tickets in 2016, but I was a freshman. My parents were like, you are staying home for Thanksgiving. So I wish I could do that. But
I did go to that one. That was a fun day. That was a fun day.
Watched that one at a Buffalo Wild Wings in Falls Church, Virginia. And it was full of Ohio State and Michigan fans. There's one Georgia fan on the opposite side of the restaurant. And as soon as the game ends, I just looked at him and I tipped my cap and I walked out. It was epic.
That's great. I will say I was biking around my Chicago suburb yelling to hell with Georgia, and people were looking at me real funny, but I didn't have anyone else to go to. There's nobody in my hometown that went there, but
yeah, it's just, I think this is something that comes up whenever we have a conversation or there's discourse about ending that series, just because it's uncompetitive, right? It's that emotional investment that we have, and I'm sure it's also on the other side. I'm sure your family can attest to that as well, that you live with these people, you work with these people from both sides, and having those bragging rights at the end of the day for a calendar year means something, because they don't play basketball. You can't get them there.
Hey, tell that to Passner's 5-year whatever losing streak to Tom Green and the gang. But anyway, I'll
to be fair, fair enough. But to have those moments where a clearly underskilled, underfunded, smaller team is able to beat up on them, and there were comebacks all 3 times, right, under Paul Johnson. Yep. To be able to do that 3 times and ruin those seasons, there's nothing like it. And that's why it's hard for me to say, oh, maybe this needs to be stopped. Like, we need to stop playing this, because the sort of the aura of having that feeling is just so good, right?
And I know, my dad and guys of his generation, like, they wouldn't even dream of stopping playing it, just because of that experience of the 1 in 5 or however many it ends up being. I remember in 98, which was my first conscious, time in my life, when we beat them and stopping another 7-year losing streak. And after the game, my dad just said to me, "Son, silence is golden, and you don't have to listen to them for the next year." I was like, there's something to that.
That perspective, at least for me, I know probably most poignant with Robert, but also Akshay, you're from around here. You have friends that go there. I guess I never really interacted with that. There's like 2 people since I came to Tech that have gone to UGA from my high school, but I don't know them very well. But now that I'm at work at a place that, I hired some UGA grads too, like, this is the first time that it's been a live, interact with kind of situation, other than, passing somebody on the street, or, getting heckled when I bike because I'm wearing a Tech thing or something like that. Like, I had a guy leaning into my car once, like 4 weeks ago. I had my windows down and I have like a Tech plate on the front, and he's walking his dog and he was like leaning into my car and started barking. I was like, this is Midtown. What are you doing?
The dog doesn't bark, but he does. It's an incredible thing.
But that is not a healthy individual. Oh man.
No. He looked like a physically fit, like, millennial living in Midtown. And I was like, what the heck's going on? But like, I've never had that experience before. So like, maybe when I lived in a bubble on campus of only these Tech people, it was easier to be like I hate them, but I've been told to hate them, kind of thing. Or like, I have this emotion that, like, quite frankly, I know blah, blah, blah as a social construct is a completely overblown thing to say, cliche. But like, it's never mattered in the same way until it's been like, okay, yeah, now, yeah, that guy who sits 4 desks over, I will hear about it from him, or something like that.
You'll hear about it from him. You'll hear about it from his friends. It's a spiral. It's all a spiral, and it just does not stop.
Well, and that's the interesting part. At people closer to mine and Akshay's age is when you talk to people that are like your dad's age, like, they know Tech, 4 national championships, Heisman, things like that. Like, at work or with these acquaintances, it's like, they're like, you have 4 national championships? You guys scored 222 points in a game.
They suck. No, it sucks so
like,
much.
You guys are terrible, blah, blah, blah. Like, hey, the ring, the banner's going to fly forever, man. Like, shut up.
That's why we need the history guy. Keep preaching.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting, I think, is the best, the politest, the most podcast friendly way to put it, interacting with friends of mine that went there on Thanksgiving weekend, or talking about the state of both programs every so often, because there's just no there's like a lack of self-awareness sometimes, right? Because I think we are very aware of like what plagues a program, what the problems are, where we sit in the college football cosmology, so to speak. And when you're that level in the stratosphere, and you were born into that level in the stratosphere, like a lot of these guys were, it's hard to have the same awareness, right? It's hard to have the same humility, isn't the right word, but it's hard to be aware of where that program has been when you're born on third base, as we've heard said sometimes, right?
Yeah. We'll just put it like this. We've given them a small loan of 1 million points.
Oh, it's felt like that the last couple of years, for sure.
But regardless, that perspective is great, Robert, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining our 100th episode special, and we look forward to having you on more often in the future.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for giving us the daily.
So I guess this is the middle part of our 100th episode special. I guess at least that's the way that it falls in the schedule. At some point, we were going to have to talk about our favorite top tech moments, TTMs, TM. So I'm going to give you the floor. You go ahead and start.
Oh boy. So if you guys have been listening through this, you obviously know that we talk a little bit about how people, kind of arrived at the spot in their fandom from the Rumble seat, things like that. So I will give a little bit of that. In terms of my own route here, I think if you're talking about like most significant tech memories, it would probably make the most sense to say it's the one where it all started. I kind of forced my friends to watch the 2015 FSU Georgia Tech game because, and I quote, "We never watched football. We would often play like Settlers of Catan or something like that."
Nerd.
And Florida State is playing. They're pretty good. I've been on the offense about applying to Tech. I did need to apply to a couple more schools. And then they won. And then I applied the next day or whenever, in short order after that. Oh, well. But no, I think if we're talking big picture in terms of enjoyment, meaning, I don't think that had the most meaning, even though it was the one that got me here. And plus it's one that just has so much written on it, so much said on it. Heck, SB Nation's YouTube channel did a rewinder on it. Anything I could say.
I really hate that you're sandbagging the fact that I picked this moment and you're just ruining it. You're ruining this for me.
Shot sheet. I had no idea.
I put it in the other shot sheet.
Oh, oops. Well,
it's fine. It's fine. I'll just pick another one out of a hat.
No, if it's the most sentimental for you, it should be. But
finish the statement. Finish the thought.
As you guys go through and listen to these, you'll note that all of these are about football. Little Jake's was about Clemson Tech. We've seen some UGA comments. We'll get some Virginia Tech ones in a bit, but they're all about football. And I think it would be a disservice to myself to pick a football one because as much as I love Georgia Tech football,
love is a strong word.
It hasn't given me that same high, and I think if we're talking about like the games that meant the most, like I grew up a huge baseball fan. I'm in a Cubs shirt right now. Podcasting is a visual medium, and I grew up with the NCAA sport that I followed being basketball. So it made way more sense to pick one of those. I'll touch on the two I whittled it down to. Thinking about the meaning of baseball and things like that is the 2019 SunTrust Park game against UGA really came to mind. And then as well as the 2017 Notre Dame basketball home game where Okogie beat the buzzer to lay in a shot right at the end of the game there. Ultimately, I do think the SunTrust Park UGA baseball game does mean a little bit more, as much as I did grow up around reasons that made me not like Notre Dame. And there's really strong parallels of like, wow, that was when I knew I was in like a community and like went to a game with a friend of mine and didn't like, we were just like, it was like, I have found a place at Tech. But in terms of the 2019 baseball game, that is just an unparalleled and unsung experience in college sports. In this week's normal episode of Science, we did touch on just like some of the weird oddball type sports stuff, and maybe on a much bigger scale, but the idea of playing a massive baseball rivalry game in an MLB stadium in college is really a phenomenon that, well, was before 2020, like spring, very unique to this baseball rivalry of putting, 25,000 Georgia and Georgia Tech fans in one stadium, which is, the biggest draw in college baseball on any calendar. Granted, a lot of them are UGA fans, but as a baseball guy, it meant a lot it meant a lot to see that. The narrative going into that being, Georgia Tech hasn't beaten UGA in a major sporting event in quite some time, right? Like came up short in tennis, hadn't won a football game against them since 2016. Had never, at least when I'd been on campus, won a basketball game against them. It had been since like 2014 or 15 on that one. I think 2014. Baseball, I had not been successful the previous 2 years either. They didn't make the NCAA tournament. It was kind of falling off from where they were at. And I also believe we had beaten them in women's basketball, but I don't think we had. If so,
Not sure.
If so, we were only 1-3 against them in my time. So the point is, not that can really be seen as a greater picture turning point. I think that would be an overstatement of what that game meant. But what it was kind of the perfect encapsulation of what was a very special team that, as a baseball season goes, you just get so familiar with the players, right? You can't watch all 60 some games that they play, but if you catch a lot of games, that's a lot of hours spent with Tristan English and Connor Thomas and Xavier Curry. And, I could list them all out and keep going, but just so many parts. I think Luke Waddell. Oh my goodness. Kyle McCann. Like I could just keep saying names and it brings back these connotations, especially I think for the two of us of watching a lot of that team play a lot of innings. And I think that, if they win that Auburn game at home, maybe we talk about a different game from that season, but just in terms of being a, born and bred baseball guy, I don't think anything comes close to that. I should let you get in the word. It's been like 5
So
sentimental.
The thing that comes to mind for me, it isn't necessarily the whole pizza pie there in terms of the series versus Georgia, but it was more baseball specific, is that they had struggled to win. They'd won games, but they had struggled to complete season series. The 3-game set versus Georgia in multiple seasons. And then also you have the factor of the 2017 and 2018 seasons being pretty disappointing. And this is kind of where this and then moving forward towards the end of the season is kind of where you felt like this was going to be a really, really, really big year. It was going to end in some really, really big way, really, really fun way.
It did end in a really big way, but
culminate. Maybe culminate is a better word.
Yeah.
Right. Because this ends up being a series clinching game between the 3rd and 4th national seeds that season. And so it not only was a really good baseball game, especially for us, but there's so much narrative that like you said, you can weave into this game based on the baseball season, based on the season series and historic series versus Georgia, but it was just emblematic of how that season felt. And I'm sort of talking in circles and repeating what you're saying, but it was emblematic of how that season felt. And that was the moment where you were like, hey, this is going to be a really big year. And it was, right? It was a third season, which ended with Tech placing as the 3rd national seed, regardless of the regional performance. And I think we have done that to death.
We've beat the Auburn game to death. We don't have to talk that one, but
it's also to be noted that the walk-off was in the first Auburn game. It wasn't there was another Auburn game played.
And we had played them twice in the regular season too, and won
beating them
game.
both times. Yeah. So you got Steven Williams or whatever his name was in the first Auburn game because you were a home team or site host that was the away team in the game. And then you had to go through the winners bracket or the losers bracket of Coastal Carolina and I forget who the other team was that year.
Who had already lost to Coastal, but yeah.
I forget who the other team was. So
you played a double header on the same day, and Auburn sat and rested.
And it just ran out of gas at the end. So despite how it ended, and I think because this was the season we were doing pretty consistent baseball coverage too. Despite how it ended, it was a really, really fun year just to follow baseball and get really invested in that team. And a lot of the feelings that I have for that Georgia Tech baseball team are all mimic a lot of the feelings that I have about the 2021 Braves team, right? Obviously, one wins the championship and the other doesn't, but it's the same sort of emotional investment game over game, especially when you're getting into those latter stages of the season.
And I think that's a good point. You could also say that it parallels the like tip of the iceberg, like 2021 volleyball season too. But the thing that drives me nuts is that they play this game at Coolray Field now. So you can't even fit 20,000, 25,000 people in there.
Yeah.
Like you used to be able to. It's farther away from, Georgia Tech, from, the Atlanta conglomeration, right? Oh, but it's still in Lawrenceville or whatever. No, I don't.
Lawrenceville's pretty far away.
It's far away.
My family lives in redacted northern suburb, right? But like, it's far away from there.
Yeah. Well, and the point is, you can't recapture even they don't even sell the upper decks at Truist, right? But they do.
But it's still like a pretty
job of billing out the lower deck. Again, it is if not the most attended baseball game, it is certainly the most attended regular season game that is played. And that's no denying it. It's a rivalry game. And you cannot look at that. You cannot look at the interest in the Braves run. You can't look back 5 years at the Cubs and Indians runs to the World Series and tell me that baseball's a dying sport. Like, you just cannot. Like, in Atlanta,
he took this opportunity to go on his soapbox.
You cannot tell me that baseball is a dying sport when you pack 25,000 people in the stands for a college baseball game. And much like MLB, moving it out to Coolray and only letting 8,000 people in when you could not have a bottomless pit of demand, but fill a very good chunk of SunTrust. And keep in mind, all of that money goes to charity. Why are you not doing that? You just can't tell me that it's not just baseball related entities shooting themselves in the foot.
I'm wondering now why that gets moved.
Well, the first year, it was because of the ski jump thing that tore up the field.
The ski jump thing was dumb. It was super dumb. But also, I guess that was technically also, no, it wasn't U.S. Olympic stuff. It was just they set up an exhibition for the U.S. ski team, which probably was cool, but it left that entire outfield ruined for 3 months. They had to replace all of the sod out there, I believe. But 21, they only played a 2-game set in 21, which I think was home away. And then
they're going back to Coolray this year, I believe.
Yeah, so that's frustrating. I guess it's something having to do with the Braves preseason spring training schedule, but also they're locked out. Who knows? Maybe they'll flex it.
It's Sunday, March 6th. That's way before the baseball season starts, like the MLB season.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm very curious as to why the change happened, and maybe that's something we can FOIA. Possibly.
Yeah, and I will say one more thing on baseball shooting itself in the foot, because I feel compelled to. The lack of games on ACC Network is not helping. Putting them on,
you got to put all the lacrosse on. You got to put all the lacrosse and all the basketball on.
Like Tech does not play a single game on ACC Network this year as of right now. I'm sure that'll change at least 1 or 2 events. But
there'll be some flexes.
But and I get it until March when basketball season's on. But after the UGA series, you still have 30 some games left. And even if it's not Tech, put Pitt versus Notre Dame on there. It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, maybe not Pitt, but what I'd put Notre Dame on there.
Grow the game. Anyways, that's hard deep into the
psyche of a downtrodden Cubs fan. Yes.
But again, the image that will forever be seared in my brain is the I think it was either Waddell or Tristan English popping up after a triple at third and or maybe it's second and jumping so hard that his helmet came off.
Oh yeah. I think that they've been using that in promo material for for like 2 or 3 years
sense.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
very good photo. I think it was Danny Karnick who took it. Shout out Danny.
so yeah, that's what I got. We could talk forever on that game and kind of what it meant. But as a baseball guy, that's one of the best games I've ever seen live.
You thought too much through the sentiment. Okay, not too much, but you thought so much through the sentimentality of this moment here that I have like no, like I don't have as much in comparison. I mean, my moment was the 2015 FSU game for the obvious reason. Sure, recency bias and the most notable football ending for Tech in a while, but it was just a very cool experience. That's my first year on campus. That's my first homecoming on campus. Playing obviously not that great of a season for Tech. I mean, they were 2-7 going into that game, and FSU was 9-0. And it's
but yeah, I think
it's at the end. It's at the end of October. It's still a little muggy in Atlanta, but it's starting to get colder. It's everyone and their mother expects it to be a massive blowout, and the game itself sucked. It was awful. I don't have the box score pulled up for this one, but if you go and take a look at it, both teams struggled to do anything offensively in this game. And if you like, in terms of the actual game of football that was played, this should not ever be remembered. Like, I think some people would be like, take the tapes, burn them, and then burn the ashes, because it was not a very good. It was not a very good game of football. FSU could not get FSU. You expect to be the protagonist in this game, could not get anything going offensively whatsoever, and it was really weird to watch. And I had a couple friends from FSU in town. I had a friend from high school that went to Notre Dame that was in town for break, and so we all hung out in our neck of the woods in our tech student section. So it was a really interesting experience having friends in town, being able to enjoy that moment with them, get on the field, which I'd never even imagined that would be possible, to get onto the playing surface and celebrate like that. And especially doing it in that way, running back a block kickoff for a touchdown to win the game over a top 10 opponent, right? I probably will never have that opportunity ever again. I'm never going to be a college student ever again, right? So
knock on wood there, buddy.
Never going to be a college student with no responsibilities ever again. How about that?
There you go. I will say,
it was just a really cool seminal moment in a football season that did not have that many. In 4 years of sports at Tech that also had relatively few.
Yeah. I will add, it took me a long time to not be super salty that I missed being able to do that as a student. I don't know, like that.
What, being able to jump the barrier and get tackled on the field?
No, not like the storm the field thing, but just like, I don't know. I guess the 2016 UGA game was a great one too, but I missed out.
Away.
I'm going to that due to being a freshman and being unable to, ring free of family responsibilities and things like that. But just in terms of how singular of a memory that is and will be, like, that doesn't come around every week, right? That's why
I think this sort of leads into a broader discussion about court storms and field storms as a whole. And we've talked about this before. Tech basketball last season had a couple of instances where they had some pretty quality wins at home, and McCamish is not built anymore for court storming. Like, but the way that the courtside seats next to the student section are set up, and then the way that the student section behind one of the hoops is set up, it is impossible without possibly killing someone.
You got to think about last year too. It's also like, yes, there was more students than there are on a typical night when they sold every ticket, or sold, because you could put 1,000 people in an 8,000 seat stadium, but like 250 of those kids are in the upper deck. people are spread out all the way back. It's not like people, I don't know, not that it was never going to happen for a couple of those upsets, but that would have been
there wasn't. I think the FSU one was a spur of the moment thing. It's like, well, 10 kids jumped, now we're all doing it, and we're gonna possibly have a crush situation at the foot of the stairs if we don't do it. Whereas it just, I don't think the same sort of, it's not sense of fun. That's not the right way to put it at all. It's just the same thing has not happened at McCamish for.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when the last court storm at McCamish ever has, like, if it's ever had one, really.
I'll give you some insight. So I was football chair of rec club 2018.
Yes.
So the year that we went to not the Gator Bowl, the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit, and we beat Miami to become bowl eligible late in the year. It was a night game. It was cold. Their players were like yelling at our fans.
Oh, I remember this one.
Game. They were all dressed in black.
They came up to the student section and like knelt, and I mean they prayed in front of like the tech students. It was a really weird pregame moment. I remember this. It
was very bizarre, but I remember after the game, I was under the stadium with the whistle, or to grab the whistle like 2 minutes before the game ended. Yeah, we're not going to unbox the whistle, but they were worried. They were like sending out like some more of the security folks and things like that to try and make sure that, things didn't get out of hand. And I was just kind of sitting there like, we're like going to be 6-5, beating another a team that will also be 6-5. Is this really the hill we're going to die on? Like, that's going to be the course.
I think one guy got on the field at the end of the day, and they got him immediately. He like turned around, looked at the student section, saw no one else was following him, and then got tackled.
Yeah,
it's very funny.
Yeah, that's about as close as I saw it, but I'll leave the viewer to have discretion on that one.
It also happened at the NCAA regionals for volleyball this year. They pulled out a tape cordon to prevent the students from coming onto the court.
Which at volleyball, it's a very established thing that during the horse, as long as you don't truck the team, like you run across the court.
And then I think some people did, but like,
I mean, people weren't gonna like. It's a volleyball.
You don't want to cause an NCAA
incident. In trouble, like,
yeah,
in kind of the same way of like how at like the baseball regional, they could very well have played like people's walk-up songs, just like, oh, they happened to play it, and like towards the last game, it started being like, oh, this is the inning break. And not Joey Bart, and Tristan English is up on deck and they're playing his walk-up song. This is convenient kind of thing. But like, like you're not going to rock the boat and like get the people in trouble, like people get it, at some point you got to respect the authority. Cause I was talking to someone, I think it might've been a mutual acquaintance of ours, that they were surprised that people didn't storm after the UConn women's game. I'm like, there
were like, I mean, look, there was a sizable crowd there. Let's be clear. There was a sizable.
It's not out of the question. But
it wasn't out of the question, but it was not enough students to even, like, there was a large number of students, but it was not enough to make that a question, I think.
Yeah.
Make that a serious consideration.
Yeah. But other than that, storming logistics aside,
how to do some storming analytics. We got to do some storming analytics.
I've alluded to, speaking of analytics, I completely broke my my composite athletic department score code. So
I told you to use version control.
It's not even a version control thing. I just didn't handle the year change very well. Oops. But oh yeah, we alluded to my Miracle on Techwood story too. I think everyone, most people, sorry, we're getting far enough away from there that the word everyone does not apply anymore. But I think everyone, most of the people, I'll correct myself again, can on some level relate to having an experience with that game, either there in person or far away.
It was just a very, very good time on campus afterward. Like, that to be perfectly blunt, not a lot of like happy times on like where campus is like positively frolicking in all senses of the word. There, like, it happens maybe 3 times a year. It was one of those times. It was very fun.
So big midnight bud vibes is what I'm hearing.
Yes, but like not just concentrated in one location all across campus.
Okay, if I could, taking a hard left turn, and then we got to wrap this up because it's almost 8 p.m. But if I could like see one thing in tech history that isn't a sporting event, so like a tangential thing, is I would want to be at the corner of Bobby Dodd and Techwood after the 1990 UVA win to see them light the big bonfire that like melted the stoplights into the street. Like, yeah, not a sports.
They
just like
they burned couches and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They just like they went full West Virginia on that. It was kind of impressive. We need to find some pictures at some point.
We will. Heat rises. That's what Creasine said. Heat rises.
Ugh. Interesting. Yeah, always got to be tied back to science. All right. Well, we'll be back in a few short moments with the next person. We are into the second half of our Science of the Southland 100th episode special. Right now, for this next half hour or so, we have Mr. Christopher Pascal, who is joining us from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts, despite my personal reservations about the city that he lives in. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. A little bit cold. One day I'll convince you it's a wonderful city.
Hey, places in the north that have rail transit and snow, that speaks my language right there.
Well, just 10 seconds in, we're already on rail transit. I love it.
Wait, so we're doing an entire episode on the MTA? Like, is that what we're doing? Or do we want to pivot to talking about MARTA? What's the deal?
I could definitely speak at length about the T if you want. I'm sure very many of you listeners want that.
Yeah, that's what they come here for, is our opinions on urban design, you know. So kind of a random question, I guess, but being outside of Atlanta, away from, you know, teams you grew up with, the school you went to, things like that. Like, do you go to many like Red Sox, Bruins, Pats, like that kind of sporting events, or not really?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, so the Pats are hard, right? Like Foxborough is like a solid 30, 45 minutes out of town. Don't have a car. Makes it really difficult. I'd love to.
That'll do it.
But just haven't really had the opportunity. Definitely, I mean, up until COVID at least, went to like a handful of Red Sox games a year. Those are a ton of fun. Usually you can find tickets like super late for like $20. Like, it's super worth it. Fenway's awesome. Love going there.
Yeah.
When I first moved here, I went like 6 or 7 times, like the first summer. Like, love doing that. And then now, I actually live across the street from TD Garden.
Nice.
So unfortunately, COVID has impacted that a little bit. But now that things are like open, my wife and I were talking about going to a Bruins game. Hopefully sometime in the next couple of weeks. We've been wanting to do that for a while. So
that's nice. I miss hockey. Actually, hold on. I know we're recording, but I actually got this in the mail today.
Podcasting is a visual medium.
Custom run of swim club hockey sweaters. Pretty
Those
sharp.
nice looking. Yeah.
It was a nice snag. I miss hockey. That's my point.
We sure would be nice if Atlanta had a hockey team, huh? I hear the Flames are up for sale.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Hey, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times, maybe. We'll see.
I would love to be the single city in America that has lost 3 NHL franchises. I would love to be.
Is it 3?
Well, it's already 2. It's the only city that's lost 2.
Yeah.
Adding a third would be very funny. It would also be very funny if it was one franchise twice. If the Flames are actually,
it does make it worse. Yeah.
I guess LA lost the Chargers, then got them back, lost the Rams, then got them back, and has
Raiders. So they had the Raiders, they got the Raiders and then lost the Raiders and then almost had the Raiders back. And then the Raiders went to Vegas.
Yeah. So it could be the LA, but without as quite as much smog.
Without the weather. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is kind of second Hollywood, so
yeah,
it's already got that part of it.
True. Yeah, they're doing filming down the street from me the other day. I mean, I feel like anybody in Atlanta could say that though, but yeah. So yeah.
I'm very interested to see how Jake finds a segue back to our actual topic from here, because I'm not doing it.
I have one in my pocket.
It's not my job either.
So you're in Boston. You've been there for what, 3-4 years now?
Almost 4, somewhere in there.
Cool. And so obviously before that, you were here at Tech. Did you grow up a Tech guy? Did you grow up like in a Tech family? I feel like that's the vibe we've gotten from talking to Jake and Robert so far.
I am not that vibe. I grew up rooting for the bad team.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yep. My dad was an agricultural engineer at the University of Georgia in the 70s. So at insult to injury that it was an engineering degree too, I think. But no, grew up there my whole life and then became a Tech fan when I went to Tech. Started in the fall of 2012.
Okay. So I presume there was a lot of, or at least some level of like getting used to it that took, right? Right?
Having to burn all of the other, all of the existing clothing in the closet, replacing
I did give it all to my little
stuff.
brother. Yeah. I mean, I was never like, I was a loose fan. Like I was never super passionate, super into it. Like my dad is a very low key person. Like he was never like super into it.
Yeah.
He's probably gotten more into it like the last few years. Yeah. So like it really wasn't a big deal at all. It was a more of a big deal. So I'm from St. Simon's Island, which if you know anything about the University of Georgia, that is where everyone goes for Georgia Florida weekend. Hooray, frat beach, all that kind of stuff. Please stop coming to my island. So there's huge UGA culture at St. Simon's. Basically everyone there like went to UGA. So like all my dad's friends went to UGA. And when I signed the paperwork, whatever, to go to Tech, my dad had multiple friends be like, "You're letting him go to Tech?" And my dad was like, "Yes. What do you mean?" And they were like, "Oh, I just can't believe you'd let him go there." He's like, "What do you mean? He's
what is this
engineering school?" What's the question? And I remember like thinking at the time, like, that's a really stupid question. That's kind of weird. And then I don't know, looking back, I get it now. I feel like I more understand the world of college football at this point.
I mean, I can relate to you at least on that level. I did not. My mom's an Indiana grad, and my dad went to a school, Bradley, that didn't have a football team. So like I did not get really anything about not really anything. You know, I knew Rose Bowl and Big Ten football and things like that, but like you know, you see it from the other side and you're like, oh, because I was like really confused. Like my mom was like, this Purdue thing, I don't think you want to do that. You know, but anyways, Akshay, you're the host. You need to start making segues.
Well, one thing I was going to say, especially on the agricultural engineering bit, I've put in a lot of hot air into the discourse about Georgia having an engineering school. So I do want to at least say one piece about that. Them having an engineering school makes sense for those things, right? Sort of the agriculture, the turf management, that sort of stuff. That Tech has kind of its own ivory tower. We do a lot of like machine building and wood shop culture and a lot of like, not shop culture particularly, but like a lot more theoretical, a lot more higher level, less baseline, like practical engineering, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's like, well, I'm still going to put the same amount of hot air into that discourse as I always would, because I still don't think they should have an engineering school. But it at least, you know, makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm biting my tongue real hard because I could just spin us off on an hour about like the intricacies of school versus shop culture and how it's weird because Georgia Tech, long arc of history, does have a relatively shop culture focused like type thing going on in terms of our philosophy behind our department. But I won't do that because this is a podcast about sports. And I think a fair way to segue into that is, why tech then? Like if it was like an in-state thing, or like just liked it the best, like were you drawn to it for a particular reason, or just it made sense?
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly the in-state thing. I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's almost like a no-brainer, right? Like really good in-state engineering school, like basically can go there for free as long as I somewhat do the things I'm supposed to do, get grades. Like, I mean, my parents were definitely pushing for it a lot. I had this idea in high school. I was like, I want to go out of state. I want to go somewhere really far away. And then I was like, that's kind of dumb. Like eventually, and like didn't get in places. And I was like, okay, cool. Like tech, love it.
Yeah, it's like, why would I go to Michigan and shell out $40,000 or $50,000 per year, when I can go to tech and pay basically nothing if you have the Hope or Zoe Miller scholarship? So
yep,
it's just like financially, it just does not make sense to do anything else if you're in if you're an engineering discipline or a computer discipline. Just does not make sense to do anything else.
Yeah. So yeah.
If you're getting a liberal arts degree, if you're trying to do pre-med at tech, then more power to you, but then it's not really a path that I would recommend.
So you got to tech in 2012. Are there like things that you remember like diving into? I know when I got here, my big thing was like swim club and like going to sporting events, which is probably pretty obvious based on me, whipping out the swim
your
club
whole personality,
and my whole personality, right? But like, some people go into Greek life or service or student government. Was there something in particular that you were like drawn to?
So the one thing that I had eyes out for was club tennis the whole time. I knew a guy from my high school team had joined it 2 years prior. And he had told me about it, told me to look out for it. So that was like my one thing when I got to campus. I was like, need to figure out when tryouts are, need to figure out like how to start trying to be a part of this. Yeah. Outside of that, just kind of, I don't know. I didn't go into it with like a huge list of things or like really even that much of a plan. It was kind of like soak up what I can. So go to as many sporting events as I can. It was like the only year I think I went to like all the basketball games. A buddy and I went to like every single game. Tried a few different things, went around different places, but yeah, just kind of seeing what was out there for the most part.
Cool. I'm gonna try and lead you into talking about the event you want to talk about, but I guess like I don't know, like it sounds really familiar to me, so I don't really have a good like contrast or lead out from that. Like I don't know, Akshay, you got something?
You're struggling with the segue.
I am
Do you want some help? Do you want some help? So Chris, you started tech in 2012. So you started tech in 2012. You graduated what, 2016? 2017. Right. So you had one major bowl win in that 5-year period.
I think you're discounting the Tax Slayer Bowl a little bit, but you're not wrong.
Major. Okay. New Year's Six Bowl.
Yes. Yeah.
New Year's Six Bowl. And we've actually talked, I think we've recapped the story that you and other writer Steven have from this specific game. But before we get to that, and maybe we won't get to that given the time that we have left, why don't you tell us a little about what game it is and what your experience was with it?
Yeah, so I came here to talk about the 2014 Orange Bowl against the Mississippi State University Bulldogs. So has anyone talked about... Oh, you actually have... Oh, nice. This is perfect.
Sorry, I just had to hold that up. No, I have a calendar.
Is that out at all times, or did you like preemptively take that out because you knew I was talking about this game?
No, that sits on my desk immediately
cool.
to the right of my computer at all times.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, has anyone talked to y'all about the 2014 UGA game yet, or like that season at all?
We've talked about the Clemson game that year, but we haven't talked about the Georgia game from that year.
Gotcha. Okay. Clemson game was fun too. Yeah. So the background on all this, I guess, is like, so 2012 was my first season. 2013, the next season, they just sort of like happened for the most part, right? Like nothing super exciting happens. 2012, we win that super weird Sun Bowl.
Versus Lane.
Yeah, versus Lane Kiffin, where what's his name? The quarterback was injured and didn't play. Whatever. We won this like super.
I
It
know
would have
what
been
you're
Barkley.
talking about.
I think it was. Yeah.
Ugh.
2013. I think. I'm trying to remember. I think we were the first ever team to go 7-6 in 2013. I think we lost that
7
year.
and 7.
Whatever.
7-7.
7-7. Yeah. To Ole Miss, I think. So those 2 years were just sort of like meh, like they existed, right? Like winning records, went to a bowl game, weren't super good. That's fine. And so then 2014 rolls around, and all of a sudden we get Justin Thomas, which is awesome, right? So, I mean, he's like the thing that happens this year, right? So we go through this season. Immediately, like right at the bat, like good season, right? Like everyone's super happy.
Could you tell it was different, like going into the year after the first couple of games, or was it just like,
Not really, because like even actually early on, I remember the Georgia Southern game that year. We were tied, or we were either tied or like losing by 3 or something with like 6 minutes left, and everyone was like, "Great, this is fine." Like whatever. Like, we weren't at that point, I think, yet as a fan base of like full like Atlanta sports of like, oh, we're destined to lose this, but we were kind of like, like this sucks, whatever. And then I think we got like the go-ahead touchdown with like a minute left in that game. Yeah. I remember there was no one left in the stands, and we were all just like jumping up and down, screaming. We were like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever!" Like we beat Georgia Southern. So like early on, like there wasn't a whole lot going on. Like we were winning, and then we got to whatever it was, like 6-0, 7-0, and we get to the UNC Duke game stretches. Yeah, so I can never remember which game ended up being first. I feel like every time I talk about this, I flip-flop them. But basically, the first game is on fall break, which I still to this day am pissed off that they scheduled that game on fall break.
It was Duke.
It was Duke first?
That one was Duke because I was there.
Awesome.
Ironic.
I was not. As was like most of the stadium. So we lose that game. And then I think we just like lose to UNC the next weekend. So we're like, okay, cool. Like we're somewhat back to normal. And then we just go on, like an amazing run. Like we beat UGA. We get super, super close in the ACC game. Like, so for me, I think like emotions running into the bowl were, wow, I think we just put together like easily one of the best seasons we've had in recent memory. Like this was awesome. Like we have a really, really strong team. Again, like Justin Thomas, like far and away my favorite Tech player that I've seen when I was a student and since then, is like this awesome dynamic guy. Like he's just like ridiculously fast, ridiculously slippery, like just so much fun to watch. Everyone on that team was super fun to watch. Like that to me is like the pinnacle of the option offense, right? Like if you want to like show someone the option offense, like you pick a game or a sequence like from that year. So like I was feeling good. We were like, cool, like we beat UGA. This is awesome. So then we were like, okay, we go to the Orange Bowl. I remember Steven and I were sitting in our apartment, like refreshing the thing, like waiting for the student tickets to come out to the game. Got ourselves the tickets. We're like, cool, we're gonna go to this game. So then like we go off on Christmas break. And then the game rolls around. We drive down there with another buddy of ours and his girlfriend. So the four of us road trip from St. Simon's down to not Miami, 45 minutes away from Miami, which was also news to me to learn. We spend like a day there beforehand, I think. And then, and I also remember when we left my house to go to the game, like my mom was like telling us bye or whatever. This other friend, Alex, my mom was like, hey, like have fun at the game. And I was like, we're going to lose. Like, I think there was still like this very real kind of like, we're really good, but we don't know that we're Mississippi State good, right? Because remember, this was the team that was number one when the first playoff rankings came out that year, and had Dak Prescott, who obviously has had a highly successul NFL career since then.
Noted defensive coordinator, Jeff Collins.
That's also a really, really good point.
I have a quick question. Did you guys like stay like at the stadium, or were you in like South Beach expecting the stadium?
No, we were not in South Beach. I want to say we were probably like 25 minutes away from the stadium in some like Hampton Inn or something or not.
That sounds remarkably similar to my experience going to a Wednesday afternoon Marlins game at Hard Rock in 2011.
Nice.
That was terrible. But anyways, continue.
Yeah, luckily I don't even remember what day of the week this was. It was probably a weekend. Who knows?
Yeah.
So the actual game is obviously awesome, right? Stadium atmosphere is super great. Like it's if you've ever been to the stadium, it's like one of those like very, very quintessential like NFL stadiums where like there's nothing around it, but just like parking lot for like miles and miles, and then there's just a humongous stadium like right in front of you.
Yep.
Which is like a new experience, like for a lot of us, like didn't really go to NFL games, and like I mean, Bobby Dodd is just sort of like in the middle of everything, so you don't really ever get to like see its size. So that was the first time we're like, oh, cool, like huge stadium, like this is a big deal.
Yeah.
So the game starts. I think immediately Dak Prescott throws an interception. I want to say like on the first drive, and we're like, okay, cool, this is fun. And it's just sort of this like tight first half, like back and forth for the most part. And we're thinking like, okay, cool. Like we're hanging in there. Like the offense is looking really good. Like the defense is just sort of there, but like that's fine for the most part. Like that's been our MO at that point. Was like, we're going to score 45 points a game. If we give up 35, it doesn't really matter. And like the big moment of the first half is as time expires, Mississippi State scores like a 55-yard touchdown pass. Where I don't know who the receiver was, but just absolutely mosses the hell out of whoever our DB was. Like as time expires, pulls them within 1 point. And like all of us in the stands were like, oh God, we're going to lose this game, aren't we? Like I remember just the entire game for like all 4 hours just being incredibly stressed. Like it was one of like those kind of wins where we're up by somewhere between 14 and 7 points for basically the entire game from there on. But like every time we're up 14 and they get within 7, everyone's like biting in there. It's like, oh my God, like they're getting close.
Panic.
Like, I don't
Just sheer panic.
Yeah, just like, oh God,
The
like
classic
a turnover and like this, because
yeah.
by the end of it, Dak Prescott threw for like 550 yards and like he absolutely torched us. And that was very evident the entire time in the stadium. Was like, we can't do anything to stop this guy.
I have that number, and it's just wild. If you see the passing yards breakdown, Dak Prescott, 33 of 51 for 453, 3 TDs and a pick. Justin Thomas, 7 of 12, 125, a touchdown and a pick.
Yeah, but what was his rushing line? Go ahead and read that one.
Oh, out. I have that. Where is it? Justin Thomas, 14 carries, 121 yards, average of 8.6, 3 TDs, long of 32 yards.
Yeah. So the two best moments from the actual game of this are one of JC's touchdowns. It's somewhere, I think, in the third quarter where he's running out wide, and like when you hear the expression like shakes a defender out of their boots, it's like that, but like legitimately that. Like the linebacker is closing him, and he does that little like shimmy to the inside, and this dude just flat falls on his ass, and it's so awesome. And then he just like afterburners for 30 more yards into the end zone. And to this day, like I go back and like I watch that clip all the time. Like it's the most amazing thing. Like he makes that dude look so silly. It's that one, and then it's the like 70-yard run that St. Days had. I think that one might have been in the first half or early in the second half, where basically the entire Mississippi State defense touches him at some point during the run. Like he runs into the line, like every lineman touches him. He bounces outside. He like bowls over a linebacker on the sideline and then just sprints down. And like those two moments are the ones that I remember the most vividly, of like everyone just jumping up and down, like, oh my God, like we're a real team. This is amazing. Like we're actually
a real
like,
football team.
State. Yeah. So again, like if you want to watch anything about option offense, the Every Offensive Play YouTube video that we post every so often in Rumble Seat Slack is like that's the pinnacle. You can't get better than that. I mean, the whole game we're getting 7, 8, 9 yards of rush, just play after play after play, and it's so fun.
Yeah, like I have the advanced box score pulled up, and usually the thing that has always said is that advanced stats hate the option. Like they always hate the option, but every single run on here is positive EPA. They ended up netting 25 total EPA on the night, which is just incredible for an option team to put together.
Yeah. For the dumb stats out there, I just pulled this up. 452 total rushing yards, 7.4 per rush. It was so awesome.
Oh, it was so great. I have 7.6 yards per rush. Yards per pass, 9.6.
I was going to say, you know it's a good game when your amount of rushing yards gets you basically from McCamish to Bobby Dodd. Like that's the standard right there.
Yeah, we gotta lay out some kind of real world ruler on that.
We're gonna have to map it out, but I think we might be at time or right on time to do that. So, Chris, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on so late in the day. And thank you for sharing your story about the Orange Bowl.
Appreciate the time. Happy 100 episodes, y'all.
Welcome back to the Scions of the Southland 100th episode spectacular. Right now, on this half hour, we have from the Rumble Seats Director of Compliance, Magna Carter GT, Carter Templeton, with us. How are you doing tonight, Carter?
I am doing great, fellas. It was a quiet Sunday filled with putting away our Christmas decorations. House feels a little empty. We'll just have to put in some other decorations.
I've got to ask, LSU shirt. Is there a story behind that, or you just like the purple and gold?
So I forgot that we were doing this today, and that's why I threw on this LSU shirt. But there is a bit of a story, and the story is that in an alternate universe, I was a legacy admit at LSU and received several thousands of dollars worth of scholarships to go to school in Baton Rouge. This reality said, "Nah, who wants all that free money? I want to make sure that I go to a hard school and maybe develop, anxiety issues."
And have lots.
It's Georgia Tech.
It was a tough choice. I could have partied in Baton Rouge 4 years, or I could have, had my whole psyche crushed in Atlanta in 1 year and have to rebuild it the next 3.
Yeah, well, there you go, I guess. But it sounds like that was a big draw, right? Was coming to Tech being challenged, right? I'm sure that was out of the comfort zone. At least it was for me coming in from out of state.
Yeah, way out of my comfort zone. I knew that I wanted to get far away from Dallas, where I grew up. And so that was kind of the driving force behind where I applied. I was like, well, at least, North Carolina is out in the East Coast, Georgia Tech's out in the East Coast. Sure, applied to Northwestern. I had never been to Chicago before.
Chicago's Big Ten team.
Yeah. In an alternate universe, we could have both gone to Northwestern, Jake. Could have been,
That is true. I preferred not to be a 2-seat ride from my house on the train, though.
You could have been Medill grads.
I don't think I'm a journalism guy, I say, talking on the podcast for this Big J Journal website.
We've been do this podcast, from the L train.
from the spaceship that
seat.
landed on the beach. L train seat, a lot less comfortable than the wreck, I gotta say. As much as I'm a stand for the CTA, but
the wreck seats are. Comfort is not. That car is not built for comfort. Let's be clear.
I think Akshay and I here would be talking from a position of privilege, having exposure to it. But you're a band guy, right? Like, did you guys get to interact with the wreck at all when you were in the band, or not really?
During my time at the band, there was the great, Rec Club GT band feud.
I remember
the legendary tiff between the two, kind of secret keeper organizations of the Institute over rat caps and how they were supposed to be presented. And there's this seasons long war. Blood was shed, lives were lost, horrible Twitter parody accounts were created and then deleted. It was a rough time.
And all the while, Anak was just sitting there stroking their fingers, going, "Excellent."
Yes.
Feuds.
Their plans were coming to fruition.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible. Secret societies, gotta love them.
Yeah. So, what year did you get to Tech, Carter?
I got to Tech in 2007, the Changeli's last hurrah.
Was it a fun hurrah? I assume not, given that he left the next year.
There were parts of it were fun. Clemson came into town in early October. They were ranked 13th, and they kicked 5 field goals in that game. One of those field goals went through the uprights.
That's a sickos game. Now I have to find that box score.
Oh, it's great. I believe the final was 13-3. Clemson had 4 missed field goals and a punt blocked.
Oof.
Great special teams emphasis for the Tigers that afternoon.
Was
13-3.
Relentless effort in all caps? Yeah,
that punt block was by legend of the Flats, DJ Donnelly, a name you surely remember. How could you forget?
It was really interesting talking to little Jake earlier, because he's a lifelong Tech fan, and he was talking about a game that I had never I knew enough to know that Deshaun Watson tore his ACL, but other than that, I'm it's weird. That exists completely outside of my time frame. And I will say that is a name. I've heard a lot of names, the Tech related, sports, not sports. Never heard that one before, to be completely honest.
I'm sure you've heard oh, sorry, go ahead, Carter.
No, I mean, DJ Donnelly, famous for that punt block and then transferring to Purdue, I think, the next season. So
He
basically his
had
entire
15
career.
yards. 15 yards on punt returns in that game.
Yeah, that tracks.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was him and my roommate were the only 2 people from his high school that went to Tech that year. So there's a personal connection there.
Yeah.
For me to hold DJ.
It's just like how me and Iman Shumpert are one and the same. He came from Oak Park. He's an NBA champion. I came from Oak Park, and I live on Fort. That we're just really on the same level.
Yeah, it's totally the same.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm looking at this, I want to give a shout out to Durant Brooks for having 7 punts for an average of 49 yards. Very nice punting game.
I did not appreciate the value of a good punt game. I was 18 and didn't understand it.
Yeah. So I take it your high or your fuzzy Tech memory was not 07 then, but leading into that, I'm sure 08 and 09 had to be pretty special. Say what you will about couple years after that, but you got 2 solid years there on the flats for sure, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Coming into 08, prior to that, So as you mentioned, Changeli was asked to leave nicely following the 2007 season, and there was a lot of questions about who Georgia Tech should hire. And I me and all my knowledge of college football at the time, I was seeing who was hot. I was like, there's this really good coach up in the Northeast. That guy Randy Edsall at UConn. I think Georgia Tech should take a look at that guy. But we didn't.
In complete seriousness, was that an actual suggestion at the time? I mean, UConn had one good Big East season, to be fair.
And that was a season. They were, he built something there up in Stores. I don't know
where they played in East Hartford. Poor UConn. Sorry, continue.
No, I don't know if anyone else was clamoring for Randy Edsall in 2007. I was, but this was before Twitter was as big as it is now, or even as big as it was in 2010. So, I didn't have, I couldn't just tweet at Dan Radakovich, be like, hey, at GTD Rad, buddy, should take a look at the guy up in Connecticut.
Let me tell you, do I got a deal for you?
We never would have had the civil conflict if that would have worked out. A shame.
A shame. They may. I can't believe you lost the trophy.
So I noted here, Carter, that you've given us a couple of ideas for those highlights. Did you whittle it down? Or are they equal? I've been on the edge of my seat because one of these games I've heard a lot about, and the other I just don't think I know nearly as much about.
So I cheated a bit and looked at the sheet after after I put my stuff down, I see who's next and what they picked. So rather than having any kind of conflict or crossover there, I figured I'd pick the one that hadn't been mentioned before, and that would be the 2009 football game at FSU. In a year full of really fun, high-scoring games from for Georgia Tech football. That one for me is probably the peak, the zenith of all that, and it's probably not a popular opinion because there are a lot of other really good games, but this one for me was special because FSU, this was in Tallahassee, a place that Georgia Tech up to that point had never won. If I pull up the Winsipedia here, all of Tech's wins early on in the series, all of those games were in Atlanta. Then when Florida State joined the ACC in the 90s and they started going home and home, FSU won every single one of those in the 90s and early 2000s until Paul Johnson came and pulled a pretty big upset in 2008. So 2009, this is the first time since the divisions had split that Georgia Tech's going to Tallahassee. And this is a full band away trip, which is something that is pretty uncommon. We play Clemson every year, the 2 hours away, we bring full band. We play in Athens every year. We play in Athens every year, and we bring the full band. They're 70 miles away, but we don't bring the full band anywhere else. It's too far, and it costs a lot of money to do that. But someone's decision, probably a few people's decision, to say, hey, yeah, let's give the band enough money to send the whole band down to Tallahassee. That's 7 coaches, 7 coach buses.
Wow.
Full of people. And large brass instruments, and we'll put them up for the weekends.
I was going to say I've led a flotilla of 4 CRC 12 passenger vans to Tallahassee, but I can't imagine the logistics that go into bringing 350 or some kids to another state 4 hours away.
I'm also imagining just that many college kids in Tallahassee, which is a completely different experience in terms of college town from Midtown Atlanta. And it's just bewildering what could have gone on that trip.
Did you guys get a whole hotel then? Or how did that even work? Like on a game day, that's got to be impossible to find.
They must have planned this out pretty well in advance because it was a pretty big hotel with a couple of different buildings, and we were out. Some people were in, I think, the main hotel. We were out in like one of the, I don't want to call it a villa, but like it was like one of the smaller little houses that had like 3 or 4 rooms, and that's where I and like the 4 people I was rooming with for that trip, we were out there. That Friday night, we had the option to take a couple of buses into PCB, which I was like, sure, that sounds great. I was 19 at the time, so that was probably not really the wisest decision because there wasn't much I could really get up to.
Womp womp.
But I that was the decision I made. It sounds like people had a lot of fun back at the hotel. I'm like, well, should have done that, but coulda, woulda.
One thing I noted, you did the top 10 of the last 10 to celebrate CPJ's 10th year. Just back in 2018. I don't know if you touched on this game. Did you at all? At least in terms of the gameplay, right?
No. So this game was not actually on that list of the top 10 of the last 10. I did end up writing about it, I think, in 2020 in anticipation of the season opener at FSU that year. But no, I did not include it in the top 10, and I would stand by that. Honestly, I think all those games are still better than this game. But for me personally, this is like, I had a real connection to this game personally, and a lot of those games I wrote about, although they are the best games of that era, I didn't get to go see. I, like most people, watch it on a television screen. And
Yeah.
I was at this game, and that's why it means a lot to me, and it's why I wanted to talk about this game.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And I'm pretty sure the only exposure I have to this game is your preview in 2020 leading into it. So very interested as what you have to say in terms of the Doak, because that is definitely an interesting place to watch a game. Not that I've seen one there, but we did walk in a really big circle around it one time. But
it's a neat little circle. But yeah. So that's I don't remember the exact date. Actually, no, I have it right up here.
I have it. October 11th, 09 is what I have.
Okay, I'm seeing October 10th, but either way, it's that second weekend in October. Yeah, so this is an evening kickoff in Tallahassee, early October, and at that point in the year, supposedly the weather's starting to cool off, and maybe it had in the Florida Panhandle, but everything's relative when it comes to weather. And that day and evening, it was hot and muggy and really gross, honestly. Like really,
Atlanta summer kind of stuff.
Atlanta summer kind of stuff for sure. Something I hadn't yet experienced, but yeah, like definitely that just like really you stand outside for 5 minutes and you're just like, ugh.
I feel nasty. Feel like I've just taken a bath outside.
So imagine that, and you're wearing these like polyester uniforms that cover, your arms and legs and all that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just to add
cooking,
to it.
Just cooking from the inside because of the heat.
I distinctly recall the one of the Memorial Day parades when I was a high school marching band kid, and I was playing snare that day, marching that 3 miles through town in the polyester in like 85. I'm sure it was much worse in the Tallahassee humidity than that could ever be. But
yeah, that Florida swamp weather just accentuates everything. It's awful. I've never been more excited to see the people from the opposing band bring us water.
Oh, is that like a thing that like bands do? Or is that just like hey, we know you're dying, like we're gonna bring you some hospitality?
It depends. In this case, I think it was definitely the latter. I think the Florida State band is probably well aware of the general atmospheric conditions in Tallahassee, especially that time of the year, and in September as well. I'm sure it's way worse, but
oh god, yeah.
So it is this hot, muggy primetime game. First visit to Tallahassee for Georgia Tech in 6 years. Paul Johnson's first and only time there. Actually, looking at the schedule, and Florida State at this time, because Georgia Tech's really hot right at this point. They've won three. They won. They opened up 4-1. Just had this big win over Mississippi State and Starkville, and so they've got a big old number next to their name, and they're coming in hot against FSU, who is undergoing some tumults on their end. This is 2009. It turned out to be Bobby Bowden's final season in Tallahassee, and the Seminoles got off to a really rough start, and so things kind of boiled over for the Noles faithful, and when it comes to Bobby Bowden, and there started to be this kind of movement to fire their legendary coach who'd been there for decades, and so this was the first game for FSU since that had happened, and so you have a lot of people there who are like wearing black. It's some like as a symbolic gesture to say they're kind of done with Bobby Bowden. A lot of people showing up, being extra supportive of Bobby Bowden, and it's a really tough time for the Seminoles, especially coming in against an opponent who's red hot and pulled a big upset over them just the previous year. Yeah. But so this game gets started, and I'm going to need to pull up the play-by-play real quick because some of my memories are a little spotty. So bear with me for a second.
No rush.
It's all come out in editing, right?
Yeah, we can always edit it out. I have at least the scoring summary pulled up. So you start out with a FSU touchdown on their first drive. Tech answers. They basically trading touchdowns for most of this game, like it's a standoff in the middle of the desert. And then the dam kind of breaks late on, probably right at the middle of the third quarter. The points stop coming, and then the game kind of slows to a crawl, it looks like.
Yeah, that's try to pull up thing because I want to see the drive summary. That's all I really want. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So this was a classic kind of no defense game on both teams' parts. But so yeah, FSU gets the ball first. They score in about 4 minutes. Georgia Tech gets the ball back. They run the ball a lot as they did to score. And then right after that first Georgia Tech touchdown, just a bolt of lightning cracks the sky. And so they have to stop the game because there's a thunderstorm in the area. And so they've got to clear everyone out of the stands. They got to clear the bands out of the stands. The Georgia Tech band had been put up in the south end zone right underneath where like the FSU visitor center kind of like overhangs these rows. And so we were right underneath that. And most when I know that when most schools come to Bobby Dodd, they get put in the lower level.
Yeah.
But FSU, I guess they'll put you in the upper level, and they thought that I guess that would keep the noise down on our end, but all our sound reverberated off the bottom of this overhanging visitor center back onto the field. So that backfired on them.
Yeah.
Anyway, this thunderstorm starts, and they put us out in the concourse because where else are they going to put all these people? We just have to sit there and like endure this for an hour. So remember when I said, like it's already hot and muggy. Now you're bringing all these people, like all of these people into these concourses where it's just going to get even worse.
Yes. This happened at the 2014 Duke game that was at Bobby Dodd too, when a thunderstorm just came out of nowhere at halftime. And so it's not only humid and muggy on the field level, but then it's pouring rain. Everyone's stuffed into the concourse underneath. I was in the south end zone. There was just like tons of people underneath there, and it was nasty. Like just could not breathe levels of humidity under there.
That's really interesting to hear you guys talk about a real thunderstorm, rainstorm situation, because I've only seen two, I guess three, because there was a one rain game this year, two thunderstorm storm games in my career of tech football watching. Both were at Clemson, and one was torrential rain for the entire game, like soak you to the core, to the bone. 2017 game, basically a hurricane. You can probably hear the car going by out here. And the other was this year at Clemson, where it didn't really rain at all, and there was thunder and lightning. So you had the humidity, you had that. But I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's very weird to have two separate experiences because they definitely don't add up to that. Is what I
mean, since that Duke game, it has not rained at a Bobby Dodd home game since.
It rained on homecoming this year, didn't it?
No, it sprinkled, but it wasn't like game stopping or game affecting rain.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was also at that 2017 game at Clemson. Yeah, I just remember being completely wet for several hours.
Yeah,
being a not enjoyable experience.
You're a band guy too. I was sitting right behind the band because they put the students right up behind the band in the west end zone there, and the poor color guard girls who were in the front row. There's a big brick wall, and then that front row. It had been raining so long, like basically for 2 days straight at that point, that there was like standing water in that front row where they were all like standing to like it. poor sousaphones in front of us were just like using the sousaphone to like try and keep the
Oh
person leaning
no.
over a little bit, trying to like be like a little bit of a tent or a shower. But so I take it the game did not end on time, at least in Tallahassee.
No, I said it was an hour delay. It might have been longer than that. If you ever watch like the replay or like the GT Bob replay, rest in peace. They cut away midway through the first quarter, and it's just kind of a seamless cut back from that. But it was a very long delay during which I'm sure ESPN cut to some other game going on. But we come back. So that game, I believe it kicked off. That was a night kick, so it kicked off at. That one probably kicked at 8, so it was already late. So it's midway through the first quarter. It's probably around 9:30. We're getting back into play, and we have played about 7 minutes, 8 minutes of game time. So FSU gets the ball back. They score pretty quickly. Georgia Tech gets the ball. They score in 2 plays. Anthony Allen gets the ball in the first play and runs it all the way down to the 1, and then Nesbitt punches in for a touchdown. And that's the story of this game, was just going back and forth until someone couldn't score, and that ended up being FSU late in the game. But it's not from certainly they were doing their best to keep up with Georgia Tech. Just wasn't enough. There's a somewhat famous halftime interview is Bobby Bowens walking off the field. The sideline reporter, who I do not remember who that was, is asking him about the game, and he just sounds flummoxed for a few seconds. He just puts out,
what?
It's like, we don't know who to tackle.
I mean,
pretty much
he's
exactly
not
like
wrong. He's not wrong about his team. I mean, at that point, he's allowed 35 points and only put up 28 in response. It's looking tough for a Bobby Bowden defense there.
Wait, well, I thought FSU was winning 35-28 at half.
Do I have this backward?
FSU
Oh, well, he's
was
still allowed
winning.
28 points, to be fair.
But there's a lot of big plays by Georgia Tech. I believe Jonathan Dwyer had a really nice 69-yard run in the second quarter. But there's one play in the third that really cemented Joshua Nesbitt's legendary status amongst Georgia Tech faithful. And this is it was an option play, and Nesbitt runs right and pitches it. I believe it was supposed to be for Roddy Jones, current ESPN commentator Roddy Jones. It's a little behind, and Jones drops it. And I believe it was I can't remember if it was Reed for FSU or not sure, but he picks it up and he immediately is met by Joshua Nesbitt, who somehow wrests the ball out of that guy's hands and gets the ball back. So it's a double turnover on the play.
Nice.
Oh, now I have to find this in the play-by-play.
Georgia Tech keeps, let's see.
Right. Okay. I see third quarter, Josh Nesbitt, no gain, fumbled it. No, that's not it. Josh, no, they no.
It's a good thing I know what's the search on YouTube here. Hold on.
I'm very curious about how this looks in the play-by-play.
I'm finding the relevant YouTube right now. So third quarter. No, hold on. Gonna let the third quarter, 2nd and 6, Georgia Tech, round 7 minutes 45 seconds. So yeah, midway through the third quarter here.
2nd and 6, you said?
That's 2nd and 6.
All right, so I see a 2nd and 7 at the 46.
That might
All
be.
I have is
no.
all I
This
have
is
is that my look?
this is 2nd and 6 at the 22.
Yeah, it's definitely missing some plays.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because the time of possession on this game is only like 40 minutes. So
Yeah, so I've got the drive open here. Yeah, there's a big gap. There's a big gap. It says 1st and 10 at Georgia Tech 43, and then 1st and 10. Yeah, this is not right at all.
You love to see it.
ESPN. Imagine building products on top of ESPN data.
Carter,
Who would do that?
I did want to say one thing. The thing that when I was first going over this this play-by-play that stuck out to me is the probably the epitome of how the option could really hide a great pass play in plain sight. That being the 73-yard strike to Demaryius Thomas, kind of to get Tech on the board first in the second half. That was something that came to mind for me, at least.
That was
They
fun
popped
play.
that as the first play out of the half.
That was a fun one because someone, I can't remember, someone is trying to defend Thomas, and they draw a flag for pass interference because Demaryius Thomas is probably 8 inches taller than this guy. And he's not whatever he's gonna do, he's not gonna keep Thomas from catching that ball.
Yeah.
And so he does whatever the defender was. God bless him, but no, he tries his best. But Thomas handles his ball easily, runs it in. Penalty, pass interference, declined. It's one of those plays. But yeah, I just sent the link, by the way, the YouTube link of that play. It's not even a minute long, and it's in just horrible quality, honestly.
2009 was a wild time.
I tried to play it. Oops.
Oh, he just wrestles it away from the other guy. And I think the only person, they may have charged that to Embry Peoples instead of Josh Nesbitt, because the only person that you can see in the frame as the camera zooms is Embry Peoples.
Yeah. They I appreciate him smacking the ground because he's so mad he didn't get the fumble. It's
just a rough pitch for Roddy there.
The game-ending 5-minute drive that Tech had, where they just ran 7 plays and ate a bunch of clock, brings back some good option memories too.
That was a fun because even in that last drive, Florida State just needed to get the ball back, and they had a shot to win the game. And so I know that Tech is getting close to they're getting pretty far deep into FSU territory at this point, and I think we're at a crucial 3rd down, and I just remember the FSU PA just plays this bell ringing, it's like the midnight bell basically, even though at this point it is literally after midnight Eastern time. That's how late this game has gone. It's they play that, they ring this bell. Trying to get this 3rd down stop, trying to get the ball back, trying to get one last shot, and Josh Mendez keeps the ball and runs for 17 yards to put the game away.
Bum bum
And
bum.
Yeah. But yeah, that's quite a game.
Hell of a game.
I definitely need to go. That's the problem with a lot of these is there's no good way to go back and see them, especially without the aforementioned GT Bob. But
got to do some crimes, Jake. Got to do some light crimes.
Yeah.
As the
internet crimes aren't real crimes.
As the director of compliance, I cannot condone such committing of crimes. So please do that without me knowing.
Fair enough.
If you have information about a light internet crime, please email compliance@ftrs.com. Do not slander the names of these young men on Twitter.
Hey, I'm a man. I'm 40. I can take it. Are we
Not
mixing
even
memes
close to
much there?
40.
Mixing memes, that's always dangerous. But
Too much.
anyways,
Too much.
Anyways, we do appreciate it and the insight as always, Carter.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on to talk about it.
Great reminiscing about this game. Unfortunately, Zoom is about to cut us off. I wish we could talk a little bit more, especially considering how long this game was. Because like you said, past midnight Eastern.
And with the delay, we're talking 4.5 hours at least.
ACC after dark, baby.
Way after dark.
Definitely
after dark.
This is definitely the game I've learned the most about today, I think, from talking to everyone.
Yeah,
that's good because I saw, looking at the list, I saw a lot of like really popular ones that people want to talk about, and understandably so. So I wanted to pick something that was a little off the beaten path, but it's a fun one, especially for those who remember it or were there. Or just remember that Josh Nesbitt, fumble steal.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Again, if I can find it on TV, I'll have to record it on YouTube TV. If ACC Network decides to ever do one of those best of specials where they play the same game 3 times in one day or whatever. But yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again, and we'll see if we can have you on in the future to talk about another game.
Yes, and as always, for anyone listening, if you have any compliance issues, please reach out to me at Magna Carta Live on Twitter, and they will be responded to in a timely and appropriate manner. The time will be of my
3 to 4 business days, right?
Time will be of my choosing. The appropriateness will also be of my choosing.
Hey, that's what I like to hear. Thanks, Carter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carter. For the finale of Scions of the Southland's 100th episode special, we have the former owner and proprietor of From the Rumble Seat, Mr. Joey Weaver, with us from Houston, Texas. How are you doing today, sir?
Akshay, Jake, it is an absolute pleasure and an honor to be with you all. Congratulations, first off, on 100 episodes here. Absolute, proud of you guys, excited for you guys, and absolute joy being able to join you here with tonight as we record in the evening.
Oh crap! It's 9:45. We've been doing this a while.
I was gonna say we're definitely glad to have you. I don't know if you can call him the owner of From the Rumble Seat, but proprietor definitely was very true for a long time.
Look, I like using the owner and proprietor of S&P Plus bit from old or OG PAPN, and I try to weasel it into as many things as I can these days.
If I could be part owner of Vox, I would be okay with that.
That is fair. If you haven't caught on yet, many of our bits are recycled and repurposed from other places with new sourcing, but yes. Technically,
imitation is the best form of flattery, number one. And number two, nothing is ever original. Everything is a copy. Eat at Arby's.
Anyways, Joey, thanks so much for joining us. We can kind of get towards eventually this game, this memory you're talking about. But as we've been going through with everyone else, we're just kind of talking about how you got into the tech sphere, maybe a little bit about how you got involved with the site, and then talking about just something that you look back and makes you smile. One of the good memes.
Yeah, so I guess tech fandom started. I was probably around 10 years old or so, and so this would have been, maybe I was probably 8 or 9 when George O'Leary was finishing up his time, and you had a couple really good seasons with Joe Hamilton and Goose Godsey, some of those guys, and so I think at some point, it was like, well, you become aware of college football when you're a kid growing up in Metro Atlanta, and you get to decide, do you want to be a Georgia fan or a Georgia Tech fan? And I guess I was that weird kid that was like, well, I want to cheer for Georgia Tech, because they got a good football team. And I just decided that early on, not knowing a whole lot of anything else about what was going on. And it turns out that's ended up where I went and did my undergrad. I don't know why I call it that, because I don't have a master's or anything like that, but that's where I ended up going to college, and it was that was a pleasure, and so that was exciting, getting to then join in and be a student in the student section for a team that I've cheered for so many years. And really what happened was I got active, commenting in the From the Rumble Seat comment section back in 2010, 2011.
The heyday of online blogging.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was there were some serious HTML work being done back then.
I was going to say that the comments section used to be hundreds in a given day on this here fine.
We went back and looked at one of them, right? We were trying to find out a moment in one of the games. I think it was the 08, or it was either the 08 or the 14 game that we talked about earlier with Jake or Robert. And we like combed through one to try to find a specific moment that in the play-by-play that we couldn't figure out. There's like 300, 400 comments in there.
Oh yeah. It got real active there for a while. I guess what ended up happening was I commented a lot on the site there for a few months. And then at one point, the previous owner and proprietor before me, Winfield Tufts, he reached out to me, and my big brother in fraternity was Nate, who some might remember around here as well. He reached out to us and said, "Hey guys, like SB Nation is trying to make a push to cover recruiting a little better. Did you want to come on and cover recruiting for us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And that was probably around Christmas time. So I did that for, a couple months, and then through the off season, it was like, well, nobody else is posting anything. So I'll just start, posting whatever I feel like posting, whenever. Did that for a few months. And then after, I'd been on the site for maybe 6 months or something. And Winfield said, "Hey, I just got a new job. I don't have time to run the site anymore. Do you want to run it?" And there it was. And that's the kind of, the rest is history, as they say. So it was kind of all by accident, but basically that's how I got involved, was just, commenting, and someone took notice, I guess.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
I wanted to there was one thing that I was thinking of when you were talking through that. Winfield and John Bird, I think, were the original two guys, right?
Yep.
Both of them were wreck drivers. So, I assume people know where the name of the site comes from, but both of them were wreck drivers. Bird was 07. I think Winfield was 10.
I think he was 09.
I have when I was in Rec Club, I put
Akshay,
together
you
a
literally
site
made the Rec History website. How do you not know this off the
Yeah,
top?
that's what I was thinking. I was like, I know where to find this somewhere. Okay, so Bird was 7, and then Winfield was 09. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And the site before that, I guess, before From the Rumble Seat, it was actually called the Legacy X3, I think, because Winfield, I believe, was the third generation of Tufts men in particular, I believe, to go to Georgia Tech. And after that, his two brothers, names escaping me at the moment. Sorry if you're listening. I really am. It's just on the spot. They ended up at Tech as well. And, I was there around the same time that they were. So it was cool kind of meeting them and hanging out with them from time to time.
Gotcha.
I think one of them after Winfield was in Rec Club. Name started with a K.
Karsten.
Karsten.
It was Karsten.
Yeah.
Thanks for the help.
I remember some things occasionally.
Yeah.
This is why you get paid the big bucks, Akshay. I've never
the nice check that I get from Fox every month.
But so I guess you kind of gave us a couple options here on the sheet of what you're going to go into. But so what was that high? I mean, it sounds like a lot of people have tied it to a moment when they were in school. I think everyone except little Jake, and he obviously goes to school.
Yeah, obviously.
Not Georgia Tech. So yeah, it was a student memory then.
For me, yeah, I would say so. There are two games that stick out. One was actually my senior year of high school, and this was the 2008 Georgia game. And that was the game where they played in Sanford, Paul Johnson's first year. And part of what made that fun for me was the context, because the girl I was dating at the time as a senior in high school was set to go to Georgia. Parents were huge Georgia fans, like had season tickets, the whole thing. And they invited me to go to that game with them. And her stepdad in particular, I remember saying specifically, he's like, "Now, you don't get to get in the car unless you are dressed head to toe in all your Tech stuff. Like, you're not going to hide it sitting in the middle of the Georgia stands. Like, you're going to be a Tech fan if you're going." I was like, "All right, deal." Like,
game on.
Yeah. And it was a gross day. Like, it was kind of rainy, drizzly, and they were down like 28-12 at halftime, I want to say. And there was very much this feeling of like, oh boy, here we go again, just getting stomped by Georgia. And I remember going out into the terrace, at where the concession stands are at halftime, and everyone's just, making jokes about where they're going to get victory dinners after the game. And like, it's a foregone conclusion. And then it was like midway through the third quarter, Tech comes out of the locker room and scores 3 straight touchdowns and takes a 35-28 lead. And just watching her stepfather in particular go from just like it's a big old party and nothing matters to like steaming mad, like yelling obscenities and cursing the refs and like the whole thing. I mean, it was hilarious. And so Tech ends up winning that game 45-42. And I mean, being there and seeing a couple of the plays, that was Roddy Jones skating down the sideline. That was John Dwyer had a touchdown run right up the middle coming out of halftime. So it was just, I don't know, a lot of great memories. And then the car ride home, I was sitting there silent with this big dumb smile on my face the whole time back. And he, you know, so anyways, so the context there was what made that a lot of fun. The other game that really sticks out to me was the 2009 Virginia Tech game. So this was my freshman year of college. And so, yes, I was a freshman the fall of 2009. I had a little bit of a spoiled existence, and I think it infected my perspective moving forward after that.
Joey, I kind of had the diet version of that, being a freshman in the fall of 2016. And it's funny for you to be like, yeah, I got spoiled, you know, ACC championship, you know, big top 5 upsets. And I'm like, haha, we won a Gator Bowl. And everyone, you know, around me was like, we got 3 wins. Like,
yeah, you're spoiled for the Gator Bowl.
3 wins, my guy. I had the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl was my senior year of high school, and I got 3 wins, but I got Miracle and Tech wins, so I guess it works out.
There you go. Yeah, that 2009 Virginia Tech game was just exciting for me. You know, I was sitting in the stands in the middle of my fraternity brothers, basically, and there was one point there was a Virginia Tech couple that was in the student section with us. That was, you know, through the early part of that game, the Hokies, that was a good Virginia Tech team. They were number 4 in the country. They were undefeated. Came in to play the homecoming game for Georgia Tech at night at Bobby Dodd, and there was a couple of like Hokie fans there that were just, you know, mouthing off as Virginia Tech took, you know, a 10-3 lead or something like this.
Yeah.
And at some point, Georgia Tech just came storming back, scored a couple of big touchdowns, something like this. And at one point they are steaming, just like walking out of the stadium, like, we're done with this. And I turned around and looked at him. I was like, hey, where are you going? And the guy turns around like he's ready to slug me. And there's like 4 fraternity brothers right behind me. Like, what was it you were going to do there? Like, you know, I'll help here. But, you know, winning that game the way that they won it, I mean, at night, and it was a huge upset. You know, I think Tech was number 19 at the time, but, you know, that vaulted them up towards the top 10. We took the field goal post down, and the tradition at Georgia Tech is when you take the field goal post down, you take it to the lawn of the president's house. Yeah. So, you know, we took it there. You saw the whole thing up. I know people that got pieces. I mean, it was just an incredible night. And doing that as a student, it was an absolute blessing. And looking back on it, it was one of my fonder memories from college. Was that night and that game and how the whole thing went. It was incredible.
So yeah, I was at Tech, like 6 years after that. That was my freshman year, because 2015. And one of the fraternity houses that I had, or for one of the fraternities I had friends that, they actually had like a good chunk of the corner of one of the goalposts in their basement on display. And it was super interesting to sort of learn about that story, learn about the game, and then see a piece of the goalpost from the last time you could actually knock the goalpost down. That was there. That was real life. And it had like signatures and graffiti on it and everything from brothers that had been there before. It was really cool.
Joey, I got something for you. Fun fact or weird fact now is I am 99.99% sure that if you did that and brought the goalpost to the president's lawn, knocked on the door, no one would answer because no one's home, because I don't think Angel Cabrera lives in the president's house.
Wait, what?
He lives in town I think he and his kid went to Tech. I'm pretty sure they were all like Atlanta suburbs. Adjacent at least.
Because he bikes in from somewhere out on the east side every day. So I don't think anybody would be home if you actually brought the goalpost there these days.
Well, that would be awkward. There's a really funny story from that night where apparently Bud Peterson, the president at the time, was up in his box, you know, watching the game. Yeah. And he sits there and obviously, you know, he's watching the field storming and the whole thing, and they take the goalpost down and then they start carrying it out of the stadium through the tunnel, I believe on the northwest side of the stadium. But he's still sitting there in his box kind of watching that. And he looks at somebody, I don't know, somebody who's been around a little while, says, hey, like, where are they going with that? And he's like, they're going to your house. Like, oh. And so then
I need to get there.
Yeah. So he and his wife, hightail it over to the president's house, basically. And they came out and addressed us when we got there. Basically said, have fun, be safe, something like that. Go Jackets. And it's like, yeah. And then somebody got a Sawzall out and just started hacking it into pieces. It was pretty incredible. And then you're correct. You're correct too, though, that was the first of 2 times that we rushed the field while I was in college. The second one being the 2011 Clemson game, also homecoming, also undefeated opponent. We rushed the field, and I just remember trying to get on the field and looking down and being like, wait, where'd the goalposts go? And they had collapsed it because they put the collapsible goalposts in as a safety measure, which whatever.
Boo.
Fart noise. Yeah.
Take it anyway. So I had, for a couple weeks ago, I had started combing through some of the faculty executive board meeting notes, trying to find something related to athletic department funding, but I came across that games weekend, the 09 BT games weekend, and it was just so interesting to read how Bud Peterson had responded to the whole thing. And he was like, we're glad everyone's okay. We had a couple isolated incidents, but GTPD was able to take care of it. Dan Radakovich was like, okay, we now have to pay a fine to the ACC. We'll take care of it. But it was like, hey, nothing happened. Nothing, no serious property damage other than the goalposts. Everyone's okay. We're all good. And it was just really cool to see that other side of it, where I think at least my generation of tech students sort of antagonized Bud a little bit based on some of the stances that he took on Greek life and some of the other policies that he had. But seeing how, unironically cool he was about this whole incident was just eye-opening and kind of enlightening about how that other side lives.
Yep. No, and you're correct that it definitely feels like that was a time where everything was a little bit more laissez-faire around campus, and you could get away with a lot more, and it was more of everyone having a good time to some degree. And over time, it just seems like there's elements of that kind of chipped away. But again, I was blessed. I was spoiled to be able to do all that as a freshman and have those memories. I'm hoping there's at least a couple people listening to this that were also students and, kind of remember being there and doing that night as well. It was a hell of a time.
It's wild to think about how you think of things as being stagnant or not really changing, because to be honest, between me and Akshay, you there's not that big of a gap, right? But it's still interesting to see not only in the football program, but like you said, with just how some of the bigger picture stuff changes as time goes on is pretty interesting too. And I think if you ask somebody from the 70s or 80s, they'd say even then, the stuff that we could get away with or do, or just the activities,
the stealing the tea,
just looks so much different.
The stealing the tea stuff that people got away with in the 90s, even the 90s, let alone further than that. Getting away with the stealing the teas on the top of Tech Tower in the 90s with minimal injury and the lack of civil lawsuits pushed against you from the state of Georgia.
Well, it's fun. It's a joke, right, guys? Right?
Yeah. Right. No expulsion.
Yeah.
One other fun little note about that Virginia Tech game too is if you're familiar with kind of the connection that Georgia Tech has with the song "All the Way Turned Up" by Roscoe Dash and someone else. Anyways, that was the game where that kind of became a thing. So there had been a couple of games before that where they had had one of those scoreboard, pump up the crowd things where they were showing the players doing this dance, pump up the people, all that. But there was no sound. And you couldn't figure out what it was. And then at some point, in the third quarter of that Virginia Tech game was when they got the sound working and the stadium lost it. And as you're carrying the goalpost down Fowler Street and all that, every fraternity house is just blasting that song. So that's the other fun thing, was that song was associated with that particular game that night.
That's fun. Fun fact, he actually played, I think either Sigma Chi or Lambda Chi the night of the Dublin football game. So the football team came home to that going on right down the street, and that was the whole the team's back kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that celebration. Yep.
Yeah. But I don't know if Zoom's going to kick us off, but it was great hearing from you, and as always talking with you. And I don't want to slam the door and take Akshay's hosting duties away from him, but
I think you've already done that, buddy.
But Joey, always a pleasure. Got to get you on more often, and
absolutely,
definitely great to talk to you. I know you're a busy man and out in God's time, but
well, cheers, guys! Congrats again on 100 episodes. Look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
All right, great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.